Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto was the reincarnation of Devil May Cry and God-breeding Harem? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Echo of Ash. The name echoed in the graduation hall with a finality that should have brought cheers or jeers, some acknowledgement of the dead last finally crossing the finish line. Instead, when Iruka-sensei called out, "Uzumaki Naruto," a strange, expectant quiet fell over the room. The other students, already wearing their gleaming new forehead protectors, turned to look. They weren't looking at the class clown anymore. They were looking at the boy who had, over the past year, ceased to be one. I rose from my seat in the back row, my movements economical, silent. The obnoxious orange jumpsuit was gone, replaced by simple black pants and a dark gray, high-collared jacket that swallowed the light. My footsteps made no sound on the wooden floor as I approached the front of the class. Iruka watched me, his expression a mixture of pride and a deep, unsettling confusion he tried to hide. He'd seen the transformation up close. The pranks had stopped. The shouts for attention had faded into a quiet, unnerving observation. My grades had risen from abysmal to flawlessly average, as if I had intentionally chosen the most unremarkable position. "Just a single clone, Naruto," Iruka said, his voice softer than it was for the others. I gave a short, sharp nod. I didn't need to weave a litany of hand signs. The chakra was already there, coiled and waiting, a servant at my command. I formed a single, precise sign, the ram, and pushed. Beside me, a perfect replica of myself shimmered into existence. It wasn't a pale, sickly thing like the ones I had supposedly failed with before. It was solid, real, and it met my gaze with the same unnervingly calm blue eyes. A murmur went through the students. Mizuki, the other instructor, clapped with forced enthusiasm. "Excellent, perfect execution." Iruka just stared, his brow furrowed. It wasn't the success that bothered him, it was the ease. The casual, almost dismissive way I had performed a technique that had been my bane. He held out a Konoha forehead protector. I took it, my fingers brushing his. He flinched, a barely perceptible tremor, as if my touch was colder than it should be. I tied the protector around my forehead, the cool metal as. Strange anchor to a world that was starting to feel less and less like my own. I walked back to my seat in that same expectant silence. The eyes on me weren't mocking. They were wary. They had no words for what they were seeing. But they felt it. The boy who had been a noisy, empty waterfall was now a deep, still lake, and no one knew what lay in its depths. Later, outside, under the indifferent sun, the other teams were formed. Parents congratulated their children, a sea of happy, normal families. I stood apart, a solitary island in their tide, and felt nothing. No envy, no sadness. There was only a hollow echo. A ghost of a feeling that told me I had stood like this before, countless times, watching the lesser lives of lesser beings play out their brief, bright dramas. The team assignments were read. When my name was called alongside Uchiha Sasuke and Haruno Sakura, a predictable groan came from the pink-haired girl. Sasuke, the last loyal Uchiha, merely grunted, his gaze fixed on some distant point of vengeance. He was a tool honed by tragedy, sharp and dangerous, but brittle. Sakura was a distraction, her affections a frivolous waste of energy, but her loyalty, if properly forged, could be a useful shield. Our sensei, we were told, was Hatake Kakashi, the copy ninja, a man of repute. It would be interesting. We waited for hours in the classroom. Sakura paced and complained. Sasuke sat and brooded. I leaned against the wall by the window, watching the movement of the leaves on the trees, tracking the path of a hawk circling high above. My senses were sharp, almost painfully so. I could hear the frantic beat of Sakura's heart, the low, steady thrum of Sasuke's anger, the whisper of the wind as it curled around the corners of the academy. These sensations were new, yet anciently familiar. It was like remembering how to breathe. Finally, with a lazy puff of smoke, he appeared. Hatake Kakashi. Silver hair that defied gravity, a mask that hid his face, and an eye that held a universe of boredom and loss. "My first impression of you all," he said, his visible eye crinkling into a smile that didn't reach it. "You're a bunch of idiots." The rooftop introduction was a farce. He asked our names, our likes, our dislikes, our dreams. Sakura spoke of boys. Sasuke spoke of revenge and restoration. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. There are things I like, and things I dislike. As for my dream," I paused, my gaze meeting Kakashi's. For a fleeting moment, I let the placid mask slip. I let him see a sliver of the chilling emptiness, ancient weariness that resided deep within me. "I have a past to reclaim." The words hung in the air, heavier than they should have been. Kakashi's bored expression tightened almost imperceptibly. He saw it. He saw that my words weren't the empty boast of a child, but a statement of intent, cold and absolute. The next day, at the training ground for his bell test, the game began. He explained the rules. Get a bell from him by noon. Or be tied to a post and watch the others eat lunch. He was testing us, but not on our combat skills. It was a test of something more fundamental. "He's not trying to see if we can fight him," I said. Once we had scattered, I found Sasuke hiding in a thicket, his eyes scanning for the Jonin. Fighting him alone is suicide. He's a veteran of the Third Great War. You think 3 fresh genin can touch him? Sasuke scowled, his pride pricked. "What's your point, Dobi?" "The point, Uchiha, is that there are only 2 bells," I said, my voice low and even. "He's telling us to compete. To work against each other. But the true test is whether we are smart enough to see the lie." His Sharingan wasn't active, but his dark eyes narrowed in thought. He was arrogant, but he wasn't a fool. Teamwork. He wants to see if we can overcome our instincts to work together. If we fail, we're sent back to the academy. Your quest for vengeance gets delayed. You don't want that, do you? I wasn't asking for his friendship. I was presenting a logical argument that aligned with his goals. It was the only way to move a piece like him. He was silent for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. "What's the plan?" "Simple. We give him a problem he can't ignore from 3 different directions. I need you to be the primary threat. Draw his attention. Your fire jutsu. Be loud, be flashy. Make him believe you are arrogant enough to challenge him head-on." "And you, what will you be doing?" he asked, a hint of suspicion in his tone. "I'll be the reason the plan works," I said, and before he could argue, I had melted back into the shadows. Finding Sakura was easier. She was caught in one of Kakashi's basic genjutsu, screaming at a vision of a mutilated Sasuke. I dispelled it with a simple pulse of chakra, the illusion shattering like glass. She gasped, her eyes wide with terror and relief. "Sakura," I said, my voice sharp, cutting through her panic. "Get it together. Sasuke is fine. He's creating a diversion. I need you to go to the clearing with the training posts. Hide. Do not engage. Wait for my signal." "But what are you?" "There's no time. Do you trust me to get this done, or not?" Her eyes searched mine, looking for the idiot she thought she knew. She didn't find him. She found a stranger, calm and commanding. She hesitated, then nodded, her fear replaced by a flicker of determination. She scurried off towards the clearing. The stage was set. I felt the surge of chakra as Sasuke launched his grand fireball. A massive sphere of flame roared through the forest. Impressive and utterly useless against a Jonin. But it did its job. Kakashi, who had been toying with Sasuke using his superior speed, was forced to use a counter-jutsu. For a split second, his attention was fixed. That was my opening. I had created a dozen shadow clones. They weren't a chaotic mob. They moved like a pack of wolves, silent and coordinated. While Kakashi was focused on Sasuke's frontal assault, my clones emerged from the earth, from the trees, from the shadows themselves. They didn't attack Kakashi directly. They attacked the environment. One group threw a net of ninja wire, not at him, but in the path he would need to dodge towards. Another group slapped explosive tags onto the surrounding trees, creating a cage. A third used kunai to kick up a massive dust cloud, obscuring his vision. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Kakashi was forced to move, to react. He was faster, stronger, but he was only one man. He couldn't be everywhere at once. He dispatched the clones with contemptuous ease. But they had served their purpose. They had funneled him. While he was occupied, I had moved. Not towards him, but away. I had circled around the entire engagement zone, a ghost in the foliage. From my vantage point, I saw him neutralize the last of my clones and turn his attention back to Sasuke, a flicker of what might have been approval in his eye. He still thought the game was about him. I gave the signal, a bird call, short and sharp. In the clearing, Kakashi had just appeared behind Sasuke, a kunai to his throat. "You're good," the Jonin said. "But not good enough. He's not supposed to be," a voice said from behind him. Kakashi whirled around, his eye wide with genuine surprise. One of my clones stood there, holding a kunai to Sakura's throat. It was a bluff, a disgusting one. But it was a move a shinobi would make. He hadn't sensed my clone near her, she had been hidden too well. His surprise cost him another fraction of a second. And in that fraction of a second, the ground beneath him erupted. It wasn't a clone, it was me. I had tunneled beneath the training ground, a painstaking, chakra-intensive process, coming up directly under his position. I didn't reach for the bells. My hand shot out and grabbed his wrist, the one holding the kunai to Sasuke's throat. My other hand, slick with mud, slapped against his flak jacket. He was off balance. His attention split in 3 directions. He was a master, but even a master can only parry so many threats at once. With a flick of his wrist, he broke my grip and vanished, reappearing on a tree branch a dozen yards away. He looked down at us. Sasuke, panting from his exertion. Sakura, pale but resolute. And me, climbing out of the hole in the ground, mud-streaked but calm. He looked down at his hip. The 2 small bells were gone. I held them up, letting them chime softly in the breeze. "The mission," I said, my voice flat, "was to get the bells. You prioritized neutralizing the combat threats. But you forgot to protect the objective." Kakashi was silent for a long time. Then he let out a low chuckle. He hopped down from the branch, his posture relaxed. "The others who have read this test. The ones who followed the rules, the ones who came at me alone, they all failed. The ones who understood the meaning behind the test, teamwork, they passed." He looked at me, his eyes sharp and analytical. "But you not only understood the meaning, you manipulated your team like pieces on a board and orchestrated a scenario where I was forced to make a tactical error. You didn't just pass, Naruto. You won." He passed us. He told us we were officially Team 7. But as we walked away, I felt his gaze on my back, heavy with questions that had no easy answers. Our first real mission was a simple C rank, escorting a bridge builder, Tizuna, to the land of waves. He was a stubborn old man who smelled of sake and secrets. From the moment we left the village, I felt it, a prickling on my skin. We were being watched. I didn't say anything. A premature warning would reveal the depth of my senses, and I wasn't ready to show that card. Instead, I watched, I listened. I saw the puddle, on the road on a day when it hadn't rained. I noted Kakashi's subtle glance towards it. He saw it too. He was testing us again, waiting to see if we would notice. When the 2 enemy ninja, the demon brothers, erupted from the water, their chained weapon tearing our sensei into pieces, Sakura screamed. Sasuke froze for a heartbeat, his mind processing the impossible. I didn't freeze. The moment the chain appeared, I moved. I pushed Tizuna to the ground, drawing 2 kunai in a single fluid motion. One brother charged Sasuke, the other came for Tizuna and me. I met his charge head-on. He swung his clawed gauntlet, expecting me to dodge or block. I did neither. I stepped inside his reach, my body moving with an unnatural fluidity. My first kunai deflected his claw, not by blocking its force, but by redirecting it. Sending his arm wide, my second kunai sliced the tendons in his wrist. He howled, his weapon arm going limp. Before his partner could react, I slammed the pommel of my kunai into the side of his head. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The other brother, seeing his partner fall, hesitated. That was all Sasuke needed. He sprang into action, a whirlwind of kicks and shuriken that drove the ninja back. Then Kakashi reappeared, emerging from the log he had used as a substitution. He dispatched the second ninja with 2 precise strikes to the neck. It was over in less than 10 seconds. "Good work, Naruto," Kakashi said, his voice laced with a new kind of respect. "Your reaction time was flawless." He was sloppy, I replied, cleaning the blood from my kunai. He announced his attack. He was confident we were just kids. Tazuna, shaken, finally confessed. He was being targeted by Gato, a shipping magnate who controlled the land of waves. The mission was far more dangerous than AC rank. It was A rank, possibly higher. Kakashi gave us the choice to turn back. Sakura was hesitant. Sasuke, his eyes gleaming at the prospect of a real fight, wanted to continue. We accepted the mission, I said. Ending the debate. We see it through. My tone left no room for argument. We continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The air was thick with tension. I knew the next opponent would not be as clumsy as the demon brothers. He came out of the mist, a figure wreathed in bandages, carrying a sword the size of a man. Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist. His killing eye, NTENT washed over us like a physical wave, a crushing pressure that promised death. It made Sakura tremble. It made Sasuke's hand shake as he reached for a kunai. It made me feel nostalgic. The pressure was immense, a deep-sea crushing force, but it wasn't alien. Somewhere, in the dusty, ash-filled corners of my soul, I had felt this before, 1,000 times over, 1,000,000. It was the breath of a predator, the challenge of a rival, the hatred of a foe. And it was a key. It turned a lock deep inside me. Kakashi lifted his forehead protector, revealing his own Sharingan. The battle that followed was a clash of titans. A high-speed display of ninjutsu and taijutsu that was almost too fast for my eyes to follow. But I wasn't just watching with my eyes. I was feeling the flow of chakra, the intent behind each movement. The rhythm of the combat. Then Kakashi was caught. The water prison jutsu. He was trapped, and Zabuza's water clone was advancing on us. Listen up, Kakashi yelled, his voice strained. Take Tazuna and run. You can't win this fight. It's a battle you can't afford to lose. Running was the logical choice. But logic had begun to fray at the edges of my mind. That killing intent was still washing over me, and it was waking something up. A cold, thrilling power was stirring in my blood, an ancient echo demanding to be heard. Uchiha, I said, my voice dangerously calm. We're not running. Sasuke looked at me, his eyes wide but burning with a desperate fire. What can we do? A plan requires a distraction, I said, pulling out a large Fuma shuriken. And a target that can't see the real attack coming. Get ready. We executed the plan, a modified version of the one from the academy. Sasuke's shuriken, with another hidden in its shadow. Zabuza caught the first, but the second forced him to dodge, breaking his concentration and freeing Kakashi from the prison. Now the real fight began again. Kakashi, free, pressed his advantage. The two Jonin moved in a blur of water dragons and substitution logs. But Zabuza was a master of his craft. He shrouded the area in a thick, impenetrable mist. We couldn't see anything. We could only hear the clash of steel and the growing pressure of Zabuza's chakra. His voice slithered out of the fog, cold and terrifying. 8 points, he whispered. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Now, which one shall be my first target? He was playing with us, using psychological warfare. He appeared for a split second in front of Tazuna, his massive sword raised. Kakashi intercepted him, and the two were locked in a desperate struggle. This was it, the moment of truth. Zabuza pushed Kakashi back and focused his full, undivided killing intent on us, the children. It wasn't just pressure anymore. It was a promise, a vow of absolute annihilation. It was the purest, most undiluted malice I had ever felt in this life. And the final lock broke. It wasn't a floodgate of red, boiling rage like the stories of the Kyuubi. It was a cold, sharp crack, like ancient ice shattering. A memory, not my own, flashed through my mind. A sky of fire, a throne of bone, and the weight of a crown forged from solidified darkness. A name whispered on a cosmic wind, Viridian. The world snapped back into focus. The mist felt thin and unimpressive. The killing intent felt quaint. Sasuke was frozen beside me, his body locked in a primal fear response. Zabuza was a few feet away, his blade poised to strike. He was looking at me, a cruel smirk on his face behind his bandages. I tilted my head, a slow, deliberate motion. My vision sharpened. The water droplets in the mist hung like individual jewels. The subtle twitch of Zabuza's muscles, the flow of chakra through his system, it was all laid bare before me. An open book written in a language I now suddenly understood. My blue eyes, the color of the Konoha sky, began to change. A flicker of crimson, like a drop of blood in water, bloomed in the center of my irises. Spreading outwards, consuming the blue entirely. They glowed with a faint, internal light, not with the pattern of the Sharingan, but with the cold, predatory luminescence of something that had never known the sun. My posture shifted. The shinobi's crouch straightened into a relaxed, confident stance, my weight balanced perfectly on the balls of my feet. It was the stance of a duelist, of a warrior who had faced down gods and monsters and had never once considered retreat. Zabuza's smirk vanished. His body, honed by 100 life or death battles, screamed at him. The boy in front of him was no longer a child. The chakra signature was the same, but the presence, the soul, had been replaced by something else. Something ancient, something terrifying. He was the demon of the mist. He was the monster that other ninja had nightmares about. But as he looked into those glowing crimson eyes, for the first time in his life, Zabuza Momochi felt like prey. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Red Rain and Black Steel. The air on the bridge went still. The mist, which had been Zabuza's ally, his cloak, his very identity, seemed to thin around the boy, recoiling as if from a source of unnatural heat. Or perhaps it was the opposite. A cold so profound it froze the very moisture from the atmosphere. Zabuza's grip on his Kubikiribocho tightened, his knuckles white. Every instinct, honed in the blood-soaked graduation rites of Kirigakure and sharpened on 100 battlefields, was screaming a single, primal command: flee. The boy, Naruto, hadn't moved, yet everything had changed. The subtle shift in his posture was the difference between a sapling and a hangman's tree. The air of childish belligerence had evaporated, replaced by an ancient, patient stillness that was infinitely more menacing. His crimson eyes, glowing with a soft, internal light, held no anger. They held nothing but a calm, absolute certainty. It was the gaze of a headsman studying the neck of the condemned. Zabuza broke the silence. He was the demon of the mist. He would not be cowed by a genin's parlor trick. So, the little fox has some fangs after all, he growled, the words feeling hollow even to his own ears. Naruto's lips curved into a faint, almost pitying smile. You mistake the growl of a pup for the silence of a predator, he said. His voice was the same, yet the cadence was different. Each word was weighted, measured, carrying the resonance of an age Zabuza could not comprehend. You have no idea what you are facing. With a roar that was half rage, half an attempt to shatter his own fear, Zabuza charged. He brought the massive executioner's blade down in a brutal arc meant to cleave the boy in two. It was a strike that had shattered stone and bone, a blow from which there was no escape. Naruto didn't retreat. He didn't even flinch. At the last possible second, he moved. It wasn't a ninja's flicker of speed. It was a fluid, almost lazy sidestep, a dancer's grace that seemed to bend time around it. The Kubikiribocho slammed into the bridge's surface, sending splinters and stone fragments flying. Before Zabuza could recover from the momentum of his swing, Naruto was inside his guard. He held a single kunai, and he used it not to stab, but to parry. As Zabuza twisted to bring the flat of the blade around in a crushing sweep, Naruto's kunai met the thick steel. There was a sharp, clear ping. It was not a block of strength. Naruto's hand moved in a small, precise circle, redirecting the colossal force of the swing, turning Zabuza's own power against him and sending the giant sword skidding harmlessly across the stone. Zabuza stumbled, his balance broken, his eyes wide with disbelief. The boy hadn't just dodged, he had controlled the engagement, effortlessly neutered. Realizing a weapon 10 times the size of his own. From the edge of the mist, a new threat emerged. A flurry of Senbon needles, silent and deadly, shot towards Naruto. Sasuke, seeing the attack, shouted a warning. Naruto, look out. Naruto didn't turn. He seemed to know the needles were coming, and where they would land. He swayed, his body moving like a reed in the wind, and the deadly projectiles hissed past him, embedding themselves in the bridge. Haku appeared beside Zabuza, his masked face unreadable. He is not an ordinary child, Zabuza-sama. You think I haven't noticed? Zabuza snarled, wrenching his blade from the stonework. The fight between Kakashi and the real Zabuza was still raging somewhere in the swirling fog, a distant storm of clashing steel and shouted jutsu names. But on this section of the bridge, time seemed to have constricted, focused entirely on the small boy with the terrifying eyes. "I'll take care of him," Haku said, his hands flashing through one-handed seals. Secret jutsu. 1,000 needles of death. The water at his feet erupted, forming a dome of 1,000 lethal spikes of ice. At the same time, Sasuke, unwilling to be a bystander, launched his own attack. A stream of fireballs aimed at Haku. It was a brave, foolish move. Haku, with a flick of his wrist, sent a volley of ice needles to intercept the flames, while the main barrage shot towards Naruto. This time, the attack was too wide, too dense to dodge completely. And Sasuke saw it. He saw the impassive look on Naruto's face, a look that seemed to accept the coming blow, and his body moved before his mind could object. Driven by a complex mix of rivalry, a burgeoning sense of camaraderie, and the Uchiha's ingrained instinct to protect his comrades, he threw himself in front of Naruto. The sound was a series of wet thuds. Sasuke's body jerked, riddled with senbon. His eyes, wide with shock, stared at Naruto. A trickle of blood ran from the corner of his mouth. "Why?" he coughed, his body slumping. "I don't know. My body just moved." He collapsed onto the cold stone, a pincushion of ice and steel. A profound silence fell. Sakura screamed his name from the edge of the bridge where she guarded Tazuna. Zabuza watched, a flicker of professional respect in his eyes for the boy's sacrifice. Haku stood poised, ready for the next move. They were all watching Naruto. They expected an outburst, a scream of rage, a surge of the Kyuubi's chakra they had been warned about. They got none of it. Naruto looked down at Sasuke's still form. He didn't kneel. He didn't cry out. He simply observed. The crimson in his eyes deepened, swirling like a vortex, and the air around him plunged. The mist didn't just recoil now, it froze, falling to the ground in a shower of glittering ice crystals. The temperature on the bridge dropped 20 degrees in a matter of seconds. "A noble gesture," Naruto said, his voice a low, resonant hum that vibrated in the stone. "Ultimately, pointless." He raised his right hand, palm open. The space above it seemed to warp, to tear. Black and red energy, darker than blood, colder than the grave, began to seep from his pores, drawn not into a chaotic aura, but into a single, focused point above his palm. It was not chakra. It was something older, something raw and primal. It was the essence of a soul forged in a different, harsher reality. The energy twisted, solidified, cooled. With a sound like quenching steel, it took form. A sword. It was a hand and a half long sword, perfectly straight, with a simple cross guard and a blade as black as a starless night. A single, thin line of crimson ran down its center, pulsing with a faint, malevolent light. It absorbed the gray daylight, giving nothing back. There was no weight to it, yet it felt heavier than Zabuza's Kubikiribocho. It was a sliver of pure, weaponized abyss. Naruto's fingers closed around the hilt. The moment he touched it, the connection was complete. The final walls in his mind crumbled, and a torrent of memories, of skills, of an ancient, terrible power, flooded his being. He was Naruto Uzumaki. He was the Devil Knight, Viridian. He was both. He was more. He lifted his head, his gaze falling upon Haku. "You have a choice," he said, the sword humming softly in his hand. "Leave, now, or be unmade." Haku, despite the chill seeping into his bones, chose to fight. He flashed through his seals. Secret jutsu. Demonic mirroring ice crystals. A dome of 21 ice mirrors rose around Naruto, trapping him. Haku's reflection appeared in every single one. Now, his voice echoed from all directions. "Let's begin." From within the dome, Zabuza heard the hiss of movement, a sound too fast to track. He expected screams, the sound of flesh being pierced. Instead, he heard a sound like shattering crystal. Crack. One of the mirrors on the outside of the dome fractured, a spiderweb of cracks appearing on its surface. Then another, and another. Inside, Naruto was not fighting like a ninja. He was a phantom. Haku, moving between his mirrors at the speed of light, threw volley after volley of senbon. But Naruto was no longer there. The boy he was aiming at would dissolve into a blur of motion. And the black sword would strike the mirror Haku had just left. He wasn't aiming for Haku. He was destroying his sanctuary. He moved with an impossible, predatory grace. There were no jutsu, no wasted movements. Every step was a perfect calculation, every swing a geometric absolute. Haku, for the first time in his life, felt slow. He was a master of speed, but he was moving between fixed points. Naruto was simply everywhere else. A reflection in a mirror to Naruto's left raised its hand. Before a needle could be thrown, the black sword pierced the mirror from the outside, shattering it. Haku's real body, which had been about to emerge from that mirror, was forced to leap to another, a gasp of shock escaping his lips. "Your technique is flawed," Naruto's voice echoed, calm and dissecting. "Seeming to come from the very air itself. It relies on the integrity of the construct. You trap your opponent with you, but you also trap yourself." Another mirror shattered, and another. Haku was growing desperate. He focused all his speed, appearing in every mirror at once, launching a total, inescapable assault from all directions. The air inside the dome rippled. Naruto stood perfectly still in the center of the Senbon storm, his sword held in a low guard. He didn't try to dodge. As the 1,000 needles closed in, he moved. He spun, a single, elegant rotation, his black sword a blur of motion. It was not a wild swing, but a controlled, perfect circle of destruction. The sound was like 1,000 tiny bells ringing at once as his blade met every single needle, shattering them into ice dust. The dome of mirrors exploded outwards in a shower of razor-sharp fragments. Haku was thrown from the wreckage, his body tumbling across the bridge, his mask cracking and falling away to reveal his delicate, feminine face, now etched with disbelief and terror. He lay broken at Zabuza's feet, his arm bent at an unnatural angle. Naruto walked out of the shimmering cloud of ice dust, his sword resting on his shoulder. Not a single scratch marred his skin. He stopped a few feet from Haku, his crimson eyes holding the boy's terrified gaze. He raised the sword, the black steel humming with power. Haku closed his eyes, accepting his fate. The sword didn't fall. "Get up," Naruto said. His voice was not kind, but it lacked the killing edge it had held moments before. Haku stared, confused. Why? Dying for a broken master, for a tool who sees you as nothing more than disposable property. There is no honor in it, Naruto said, his gaze flicking to Zabuza. There is only waste. Your life is your own. Do not throw it away so cheaply. He turned his full attention to Zabuza. The Jonin stood his ground, but the fight had gone out of him. He had just witnessed something that defied all logic, all of the shinobi world's rules. He had seen a god, or a devil, in the form of a child. Before another word could be spoken, a slow, mocking clap echoed across the bridge. A short, portly man in an expensive suit, flanked by 100 armed thugs and mercenaries, walked out of the mist. Gato. Well, the tycoon sneered, looking at the scene of carnage. Looks like the demon of the mist isn't so demonic after all. You're costing me a fortune, Zabuza. I'm afraid I'll have to terminate your contract. He kicked Haku's prone form with his shoe. And get rid of your broken little pet while I'm at it. Zabuza didn't move. His gaze was fixed on Naruto. Gato's thugs laughed, brandishing their weapons. They saw a few exhausted ninja and a wounded boy. They saw an easy payday. They did not see the figure in black with the crimson eyes, who had turned his head slowly to look at Gato. The look was not angry. It was not threatening. It was the look of a man noticing a piece of filth on his boot. Your presence, Naruto said, his voice quiet but carrying across the entire bridge, is an offense. He vanished. He didn't use a jutsu. There was no puff of smoke, no blur of speed. One moment he was standing 30 feet away. The next, he was directly in front of Gato, his hand wrapped around the man's throat, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. The 100 mercenaries froze, their jaws slack. Gato choked, his legs kicking uselessly. What are you? Naruto leaned in close, his crimson eyes boring into the man's soul. I am the reason you will not sleep soundly for the rest of your very short life. He threw Gato back into the mob of thugs, sending them sprawling like bowling pins. Then he raised his black sword. The weapon dissolved, not into smoke, but into particles of black and red light that flowed back into his arm. He didn't need it for this. He looked at the mercenaries. "You have 10 seconds to leave this bridge and this country," he announced. "After that, I will consider your lives forfeit." For a moment, no one moved. Then, one of them, emboldened by numbers, let out a war cry and charged. Naruto took a single step forward to meet him. His hand shot out, catching the man's sword-wielding wrist. There was a sickening crunch of bone. He spun, using the man's body as a shield and a club, sweeping through the front rank of the mob. It wasn't a fight, it was a harvest. He moved with a brutal, terrifying efficiency, breaking limbs, shattering jaws, and dismantling the pathetic army in a whirlwind of precise, disabling strikes. He didn't kill any of them. He didn't need to. He left them broken, moaning, their courage shattered into a million pieces. In less than a minute, the ones who could still run were scrambling over each other to get away, their screams echoing as they fled. The battle was over. On a nearby hill, hidden in the trees, a small team of Konoha shinobi lowered their binoculars. "Captain," one of them said, his voice trembling. What was that?" The team leader, a seasoned Hyuga Jonin, was pale. "I don't know." Beside him, a young girl with pale, lavender eyes stared at the bridge, her Byakugan active. Hinata Hyuga did not see what the others saw. They saw a monster, a maelstrom of violent chakra. But her eyes, which saw the soul, perceived something far more complex. She saw the calm, steady blue of Naruto Uzumaki's own chakra at the core. But wrapped around it, fused with it, was a spiraling galaxy of crimson and black. It was terrifying, yes. It was a power that felt ancient and vast, like the night sky itself. But it wasn't chaotic. It was controlled, elegant, and within its terrifying depths, she saw a profound, lonely pride. It was the most frightening, and the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. A strange, powerful feeling bloomed in her chest, not fear, but a deep, resonant awe. Back on the bridge, the mist finally cleared, revealing a bright, clear sky. Zabuza, after a final, desperate charge to kill Gato, lay dying, asking to be placed beside Haku. Kakashi, leaning heavily on the railing, watched Naruto with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Sakura was tending to Sasuke, who was, miraculously, beginning to stir. The Senbon had missed his vital organs, inducing a death-like state. Naruto stood in the center of it all, the hero of the hour, looking at his own hands. He could still feel the phantom weight of the black sword, the hum of its power in his veins. The echo of ash had become a roar of fire. He was no longer just Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. He was something new, something more, and the world of the shinobi was about to find out just how much it would have to change to accommodate him. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Roots. The return to Konoha was a quiet affair. The cheers that had met them at the gates for completing the bridge, now named the Great Naruto Bridge, a fact Tazuna had tearfully insisted upon, felt distant. A celebration for a different team, a different boy. Team 7 walked through the village streets as a fractured unit. Sakura kept casting worried, sideways glances at Naruto, her usual effervescence replaced by a wary respect. Sasuke walked with a stiff-backed pride, a mask for the storm of confusion and inadequacy that Naruto could feel churning within him. He had been weak, he had been saved. And the one who had saved him was the person he had dismissed as the dead last. It was a poison to his ego, a wound far deeper than any of Haku's needles. And Kakashi was a ghost. He walked beside them, his single eye never straying from Naruto for long, a silent, ceaseless observation. He was trying to reconcile the genin he had been assigned with the ancient, terrifying power he had witnessed. He was a man searching for an answer to a question he didn't even know how to ask. Their official debriefing in the Hokage's tower was a sterile, tense event. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, sat behind his desk. His aged face a network of deep-set lines that spoke of a lifetime of worry. He listened patiently as Kakashi gave the sanitized version of the report, his voice a flat monotone. Mission parameters changed. Engaged Zabuza Momochi. Encountered a second, unknown Kekkei Genkei user. Genin performed admirably. But Hiruzen was no fool. He could read the spaces between the words. Feel the weight of what was being left unsaid. His gaze drifted to Naruto, who stood with his hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed, his eyes holding the Hokage's stare without a flicker of deference or fear. When Kakashi finished, the room was silent save for the scratching of the Hokage's pen. Two other figures were present, shadows in the sunlit office. Homura and Kaharu, the village elders, their faces impassive masks. And a third, a man who seemed to draw the shadows to him, Danzo Shimura. His right eye was bandaged, his face a scar-ridden testament to a life of brutal pragmatism. He hadn't spoken a word, but his focus, cold and absolute, was locked on Naruto. An A-rank mission completed with only minor injuries, Hiruzen said, his voice a low rumble. Commendable. He put down his pen and steepled his fingers, his eyes finally settling on his Jonin-sensei. Kakashi, your official report is concise. I would hear the rest of it. The part that you chose to omit. Kakashi's visible eye closed for a moment. He took a breath. Hokage-sama, during the final confrontation, Sasuke was incapacitated. Believed to be dead. He paused, letting the weight of that statement sink in. Naruto responded, but it wasn't the Kyuubi. Danzo leaned forward, a fraction of an inch, his interest palpable. The killing intent from the enemy was immense, Kakashi continued, his voice strained with the memory. It seemed to trigger something. His chakra changed. It became cold, controlled. He manifested a weapon, a sword, from nothing but raw energy. His movements, his tactical acumen, they were not that of a genin. He dismantled an advanced ice-style Kekkei Genkei without a single ninjutsu. He then neutralized 100 armed mercenaries in under a minute without taking a single life. A weapon from nothing. Kaharu scoffed lightly. Kakashi, perhaps the strain of the battle. I know what I saw, Kakashi cut in, his tone sharp. I have fought beside the fourth Hokage. I have faced armies. I have never seen anything like it. It was like watching a legend from the dawn of shinobi walk out of a scroll. It was a power of absolute certainty, wielded with the precision of a master. Hiruzen's gaze was heavy on Naruto. Naruto, do you have anything to add to this? I met his eyes. The old man was searching for the boy he knew, the loud-mouthed orphan he had watched from afar. He would not find him. Kakashi-sensei's report is accurate, I said, my voice even. A dormant ability awakened under stress. A part of my heritage, I suspect. I offered them a piece of the truth, wrapped in a convenient lie. The Uzumaki were known for their unique abilities. It was a plausible, if incomplete, explanation. Danzo spoke for the first time, his voice a dry rasp, like stones grinding together. A dormant power, a controllable Jinchuriki, a true village weapon at last. He is not a weapon, Danzo, Hiruzen said, his voice gaining a hard edge. He is a shinobi of Konoha, a child of this village. Children are the sharpest weapons of all, Danzo countered, his one eye glinting. They can be molded, perfected. A power like that, left untempered, is a danger to us all. It must be understood. It must be guided. Quote, I felt the touch of his intent, a cold, greasy probe against my mind. He wasn't just talking about guidance. He was talking about ownership. My power, I said, my voice cutting through the political tension, is my own. It will be guided by my will, and it will serve Konoha as I see fit. It is not a tool to be locked in your armory, Danzo-sama. The audacity of a genin speaking directly, dismissively, to the leader of Root silenced the room. The elders looked shocked. Hiruzen's eyes widened slightly. Danzo's face remained a stone mask, but I felt a spike of cold fury from him. A promise of future conflict. The meeting was dismissed. Team 7 was given a week of leave to recover. As we walked out, Kakashi put a hand on my shoulder. Naruto, we need to talk. We ended up at the memorial stone, the black granite gleaming in the afternoon sun. Kakashi stared at the names carved into it, his posture heavy with the ghosts of his past. The power you used, he began, not looking at me. Do you understand it? Can you control it? Yes. His head turned, his eye fixing on me. Just, yes. It's a part of me, I said. It wasn't a lie. Viridian's soul was no longer a separate echo. It was fusing with my own, the memories and instincts becoming mine. It's not a mindless rage. It's focus, clarity. I see the world differently now, sensei. I see the lines of cause and effect. The flaws in a technique, the weakness in a man's stance, the lie in his words. I saw it on the bridge. I see it now. Kakashi was silent. He was a genius, a prodigy. But he was a prodigy of a system. A master of its rules. I was something outside of that system. I was a new rule. Be careful, Naruto, he finally said, his voice low. A power like that, it doesn't just attract enemies from outside the village. It creates them within. He was warning me about Danzo. He was telling me that he was on my side, in his own limited way. I gave a short nod of understanding and left him to his ghosts. I knew I had been observed on the bridge by more than just my team. I had felt their presence, a small team of shinobi on a nearby hill. Their signature was faint, but distinct. I needed to know what they saw, what they reported. One signature, in particular, had been a strange mix of timid fear and intense, unwavering focus. It was a Hyuga. I found her in one of the Hyuga clan's secondary training halls. A place for the junior members of the branch family. She was practicing the gentle fist against a wooden dummy, her movements fluid and precise, yet lacking a core of conviction. Hinata Hyuga, she didn't notice me until I was standing 10 feet away. She gasped, stumbling back from the training post, her hands flying to her chest. "You Uzumaki-san, it's just Naruto," I said, my voice soft, not wanting to startle her further. I watched her, my senses taking in the rapid beat of her heart, the flush on her pale cheeks. She was afraid of me. But there was something else in her eyes. Something I had seen in the eyes of acolytes in another life. "Ah, you were in the land of waves," I stated, not asking. "On a surveillance mission. You were on the hill overlooking the bridge." Her eyes widened, her face paling further. She thought she had been discovered. My team was assigned to monitor the situation, once it was upgraded to an A- rank. "I'm not here to report you," I cut in. "I'm here because I need to know what you saw. Your eyes are different from others. You don't just see the surface. You see the core of things. You see chakra." She looked down, her fingers twisting together. She stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I saw you. And, I pressed, taking a step closer. She flinched but held her ground. She took a deep, shaky breath and looked up, meeting my gaze. Her pale, lavender eyes were luminous. The others on my team, they saw a monster. They saw the Kyuubi's chakra, red and violent. But that's not what I saw. "What did you see, Hyuga Hinata?" "I saw your chakra," she said, her voice gaining a sliver of confidence. It was calm. It was blue, like a deep ocean. "And I saw the other thing. It was wrapped around your soul. Black and crimson. It was vast, and powerful, and beautiful. It wasn't the rage of a demon. It was the certainty of a king." I was taken aback. For all of Viridian's ancient knowledge, for all my newfound clarity, this quiet, timid girl had seen the truth of my soul with a single glance. She had not recoiled in horror. She had seen its terrifying majesty and called it beautiful. In that moment, she was no longer just a fellow shinobi. She was a potential asset of unparalleled value. She was a potential ally. "You are more perceptive than anyone else in this village," I said. It was a simple statement of fact, but to her, it was a validation she had likely never known. A deep blush colored her cheeks, but she didn't look away. "Keep what you saw a secret," I told her. "Tell them you saw the Kyuubi. It's the answer they expect. It's the answer that will keep you safe." She nodded, her eyes wide with understanding. A silent pact was formed between us. A secret shared. That night, I knew they would come. Danzo was not a man to be denied. He would see my public refusal as a challenge. He would send his rude Anbu, his emotionless puppets, to collect me. To break me down and remold me into his weapon. I didn't wait in my apartment. That was a cage. Instead, I went to Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death. It was a place he would expect me to avoid, and therefore the perfect place for an ambush. I spent an hour moving through the dense, dark woods, not with the noise of a genin, but with the silence of a spirit. I laid my traps, not complex seals, but simple, effective physical snares. A tripwire here, a shallow pit there, a few explosive tags placed on the underside of thick branches, set to be triggered by the severing of a nearly invisible ninja wire. It was insultingly simple. Then, I sat on a large branch overlooking a small clearing and waited. They came near midnight, 6 of them. They moved like wraiths, their chakra signatures suppressed to almost nothing. They wore the blank white masks of root and carried the straight-bladed ninjutsu. They surrounded my apartment first, moving with chilling coordination, only to find it empty. I felt their approach through the forest a full 10 minutes before they arrived. They didn't use torches. They moved by memory and by a faint, unnatural sense that was Root's specialty. They were good, very good. Against the boy I had been a month ago, they would have been inescapable. The first one fell into the pit. It wasn't deep, but it was filled with mud and wet leaves, and his silent fall was enough to alert the others that their prey knew they were coming. The remaining 5 didn't hesitate. They fanned out, their professionalism absolute. One of them triggered a tripwire. A log swung down from the canopy. A classic, academy-level trap. The Anbu sliced it in two with his blade midair, a contemptuous display of skill. But the trap wasn't the log. The log's momentum was meant to pull a second wire, the one connected to the explosive tags. The explosion was not large, but it was concussive. It shattered the silence of the forest and sent the Anbu operative tumbling, his senses scrambled. 4 left. They converged on the clearing where I now stood, having dropped from my perch. They appeared from 4 directions at once, blades drawn, moving in for a synchronized kill. I didn't draw a weapon. I simply waited. They moved with an emotionless, terrifying speed. But my new eyes saw more than speed. I saw the minute tension in their shoulders, the precise angle of their blades, the infinitesimal shift of weight that preceded each thrust. Their movements, meant to be unpredictable, were as clear to me as a child's drawing. The one from my right thrust for my heart. I swayed to the side, letting the blade pass. My hand chopping down on his elbow, hyperextending the joint with a sickening crack. As he recoiled, my other hand shot out, and 2 fingers jabbed into the pressure points on his neck. He crumpled, unconscious before he hit the ground. The one from the left swung his blade in a horizontal arc at my neck. I ducked under it, my leg sweeping out, hooking his ankle and pulling him off balance. As he fell, I brought my knee up into his chin. His head snapped back, and his lights went out. 2 down, 2 to go. The remaining 2 were more cautious. They circled me, their blades held in a defensive stance. They were trying to analyze me, to find a flaw in my defense. I gave them one. I feinted, a deliberately sloppy move, leaving my left side open. It was a novice's mistake, a lure too tempting to ignore. They both took it. They lunged at the same time, a pincer attack designed to impale me from both sides. I wasn't there. I had dropped, my hands flat on the ground, and ked my legs up in a spinning break dance motion that was as bizarre as it was effective. My boots connected with their chins simultaneously. 2 sharp cracks echoed in the clearing, and the last of Donzo's puppets fell to the forest floor. The entire engagement had lasted less than 30 seconds. I stood over their unconscious forms. It would have been easy to kill them. A kunai to the throat for each. But death was an ending. Danzo didn't deserve an ending. He deserved a message. I took the ninjutsu from one of the downed operatives. With its tip, I carved a simple symbol into the head of each of their blank masks, a spiral. The symbol of the Uzumaki clan. My symbol. I left them there, arranged in a neat little circle in the middle of the clearing for their master to find. A gift, a warning, a declaration of sovereignty. I walked back towards the lights of the village, the cool night air washing over me. The whispers in the political roots of Konoha had reached out to ensnare me. I had cut them away with contemptuous ease. The game was escalating, and I found that I was looking forward to the next move. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Crimson Prelude. The air in Konoha had changed. It was thick with the scent of foreign lands, the low murmur of unfamiliar dialects, and the sharp, metallic tang of anticipation. The Chunin exams had begun, and the village had transformed from a home into a stage. A proving ground where the next generation of shinobi would either forge their names in glory or be broken upon the anvil of their own ambition. For most of the genin, it w. as the greatest challenge of their young lives. For me, it was a convenience. A gathering of the pieces on the board, all in one place. Team 7 sat in the back of the crowded classroom designated for the first test. An island of calm in a sea of nervous energy. Sakura was reviewing notes with a frantic intensity. Sasuke sat with his eyes closed, likely meditating on new and interesting ways to murder his brother. I was simply watching. I watched the nervous Sand siblings, the hulking one radiating a terrifying, unstable bloodlust. I watched the arrogant Sound Ninja, their confidence a brittle shell. I watched Kabuto, the seemingly affable Leaf Genin, as he played the role of the helpful veteran, a performance so flawless it screamed deception. He was a snake hiding in plain sight. The first exam proctor, Ibiki Morino, entered. A man whose entire being was a testament to the art of psychological warfare. His scarred face was a map of old pains, and his opening speech was designed to unnerve. To weed out the weak-willed before the test even began. He explained the rules. 10 questions, a point system based on teams, and a final, 10th question that would determine everything. Cheating, he explained with a vicious grin, would result in disqualification. The test began. The questions were impossible, far beyond the scope of a Genin's knowledge. They were about decryption theory, trajectory calculus, esoteric political history. A wave of panic spread through the room. I didn't pick up my pencil. I leaned back in my chair, my hands laced behind my head. This wasn't a test of knowledge. Ibiki, the master of interrogation, had designed a test of information gathering. The real challenge was to cheat without getting caught. All around me, subtle and not so subtle jutsu were being employed. An Inuzuka listening to his dog whisper the answers. An Aburame using his insects to spy. A Yamanaka projecting her mind into a more knowledgeable student. And Sasuke, his eyes flickering almost imperceptibly, had activated his Sharingan, copying the pencil movements of the student in front of him. Clever. Sakura, however, was panicking. She was smart enough to answer some of the questions, but not all. Her distress was a distracting ripple in the room's energy. I sighed internally. I tapped my fingers on the desk, a slow, deliberate rhythm. 1 tap, 4 taps, 3 taps. A simple code we had learned from Kakashi for silent communication. Observe the purpose, not the obstacle. Her eyes met mine across the room. I gave a slight nod towards the 2 obvious plants, the Chunin Pret. Ending to be Genin who were conspicuously writing down all the correct answers. Her eyes widened in understanding. The test wasn't about knowing, it was about seeing. She took a deep breath, her panic receding, replaced by the sharp focus of an analytical mind. I already knew the answers. Not from any textbook, but from a fundamental understanding of the principles involved. Viridian's mind was a library of ancient lore, of cosmic physics and strategic doctrine that made these questions seem like a child's primer. But to answer them would be to reveal a knowledge I shouldn't possess. So, I left my paper blank. My passing was tied to my teams. As long as they understood the game, I didn't need to play. When the time came for the 10th question, Ibiki's true test was revealed. The choice to stay and risk being a Genin forever, or to quit and save your team. It was a test of nerve. Several teams broke, their resolve shattering. I didn't waver. Sasuke smirked with arrogant defiance. Sakura, emboldened by her earlier success, held firm. We passed, not because of the questions we answered, but because of the one we refused to be broken by. The second part of the exam was held in Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death. Enko Mitarashi, the proctor, was a whirlwind of manic energy and barely concealed danger. She presented the rules with a theatrical flair. Each team would be given a heaven or an earth scroll. The goal was to reach the tower in the center of the forest with both scrolls. And to survive. This place will test you, she crowed, a wild look in her eyes. It will bleed you, it will break you, and it will try to eat you. Good luck. As we stood before the gates, I gathered my team. Forget everything you think you know about survival training, I said, my voice low and direct. We are not the prey in this forest. We are the hunters. We have one objective. Get a heaven scroll. We will not engage in pointless skirmishes. We will not run from threats. We will identify the weakest team with the scroll we need, and we will take it from them. We finish this fast and clean. Sasuke nodded, his hand resting on his kunai pouch. Who do we target? We don't, I said. We let them come to us. Find a defensible position near a water source. We wait. The desperate and the weak will get sloppy. That's when we strike. Sakura looked at me, her initial fear of the forest being replaced by a solid confidence in the plan. Okay, Naruto, we're with you. The gates opened, and we moved into the oppressive gloom of the forest. The air was heavy, humid, alive with the sounds of things that slithered and snapped in the undergrowth. We moved for an hour, deeper into the woods, before I found what I was looking for. A small cave system hidden behind a waterfall, easily defensible with a clear view of the surrounding area. We make our stand here, I declared. We had just finished setting a few rudimentary perimeter traps when the air grew cold. It was a sudden, unnatural chill that had nothing to do with the water and everything to do with a presence that felt like an open grave. The birds went silent. The insects stopped chirping. A killing intent, so potent and ancient it made Zabazas feel like a child's tantrum, descended upon us. It was a long, coiling thing, like a great serpent wrapping itself around the world. Sasuke gasped, his hand flying to his neck. Sakura trembled, her face ashen. I stood up, my crimson eyes scanning the canopy. This was not a genin. This was something else. A long, sibilant hiss echoed through the trees. My, a voice whispered, seeming to come from all directions at once. What a delicious collection of promising young buds. A gust of wind, foul and corrupt, tore through our clearing. A figure landed before us, unfolding from the wind itself. Pale skin, golden eyes with slitted pupils, and a smile that held the predatory hunger of a viper. Orochimaru of the Sannin. He ignored Sakura completely. His gaze lingered on Sasuke. A connoisseur appreciating a fine vintage. An Uchiha, he purred. The last of the elite. Your eyes, they will be magnificent. Then his golden eyes fell on me, and his smile faltered. The predatory confidence in his gaze was replaced by a flicker of confusion, then, caution. He was looking at a Jinchuriki, a vessel of immense power he had come to investigate. But what he was sensing was not the hot, chaotic rage of the Kyuubi. It was a cold, bottomless void. An emptiness that did not rage, but simply, was. An abyss so profound it threatened to swallow his own malevolent presence. And you, he said, his voice losing its playful tone. The vessel, your chakra feels quiet. You are a long way from home, Sannin, I replied, my voice calm, my crimson eyes meeting his without fear. Looking for new skin to wear. His eyes widened. He had not expected such directness, such utter lack of intimidation. He decided to assert his dominance. He focused his killing intent, a fork. That had made Jonin freeze and Cage falter, and directed it entirely at me. It was a physical pressure, a psychic assault designed to shatter the mind of its target. I felt it wash over me. It was a cold, slithering thing, full of malice and a deep, intellectual cruelty. And it was nothing. It was a snake trying to bite a mountain. I let a fraction of Viridian's presence bleed out. I didn't push it at him. I just let it be. It was not an attack. It was a statement of fact. It was the crushing pressure of the deepest ocean trench, the silent, absolute cold of the void between stars, the way of eons of existence spent in eternal conflict. It held no malice. It held only an unassailable, primordial superiority. Orochimaru took an involuntary step back. A bead of sweat traced a path down his temple. His pupils constricted. He, a predator who had spent his life searching for the ultimate power, had just stumbled upon something that his mind could not categorize, could not comprehend. He was like a biologist discovering a creature that defied every law of nature. What are you? He hissed, his curiosity overriding his fear. Your soul, it tastes of ash and eternity. I gave him a slight, chilling smile. I am a reclamation. He seemed to forget about Sasuke for a moment, his entire being focused on the puzzle I presented. But his original mission reasserted itself. He needed the Sharingan. With a flick of his wrist, he unsealed a scroll. I will have my answers later, he said. He swallowed the scroll, and his neck elongated, stretching with an audible crack of cartilage. His head shooting towards Sasuke like a striking viper. I could have stopped him. But this was a necessary step in Sasuke's journey. He needed to be marked by this ambition, to feel the seductive pull of this desperate power. It would forge him, or it would break him. Orochimaru bit Sasuke's neck, branding him with the cursed seal. Sasuke screamed, a sound of pure agony, and collapsed. The Sanin's head retracted, his long tongue snaking out to lick his lips. He gave me one last, long, analytical look, a look that was now equal parts fear and scientific obsession. Then, with a flicker, he melted back into the shadows of the forest, leaving behind the scent of ozone and old graves. Sakura rushed to Sasuke's side, frantic. I knelt, my fingers tracing the black, tomo-like marks on his neck. A crude application of power. A parasite. It could be dealt with, in time. We were interrupted by the arrival of another team. The sound ninja Orochimaru was using as his pawns. Dosu, Zaku, and the fiery, red-headed Kunoichi, Tayuya. Looks like we found what Lord Orochimaru was talking about, Dosu said, his head tilted. Let's just take their scroll and finish this. They were here to test Sasuke, to see how he reacted to the seal. But Sasuke was unconscious. That left me. Leave, I said, my voice flat. I was in no mood for games. Zaku laughed, his arms with their air pressure tubes flexing. Make us, fox boy. I rose to my feet, my crimson eyes locking onto them. Very well. The fight, if it could be called that, was brutally efficient. Dosu came at me with his melody arm, trying to use sound waves to disorient me. But my mind was a fortress forged in primordial chaos, a little sonic vibration was meaningless. I sidestepped his lunge and drove the heel of my palm into his chest, a precise strike that ruptured his chakra network and sent him flying into a tree. One down. Zaku unleashed a blast of air pressure, a cutting wave powerful enough to gouge the earth. I met it head-on, my hand open. The demonic energy in my veins pulsed, creating a small, invisible shield of force just in front of my palm that dissipated the attack harmlessly. Before he could react to the impossible sight, I was on him, a blur of motion. A single, sharp chop to the back of his neck, and he collapsed in a heap. 2 down. That left the girl, Tayuya. She was already weaving hand signs, but she stopped. Her eyes wide with shock and a healthy dose of fear. She had just watched her teammates, both Chunin-level threats, be incapacitated in under 5 seconds by a boy who hadn't even seemed to be trying. But she wasn't a coward. Cursing under her breath, she raised a large, metal flute to her lips and began to play. A wave of sound washed over me, a genjutsu designed to trap the mind in a world of torment. To bind the limbs with phantom chains. It was a clever technique. Against a normal mind, it would have been devastating. But my mind was not normal. As the illusion tried to take hold, it met the iron will of Viridian. It was like trying to flood a volcano with a bucket of water. The genjutsu shattered against my consciousness before it could even form. I walked through the sound waves as if they were a gentle breeze. My footsteps silent on the forest floor. I stopped directly in front of her. Her flute playing faltered, her eyes wide with terror as she realized her ultimate technique had done absolutely nothing. What the hell are you? She stammered, lowering the instrument. I looked at her, and for the first time, I truly saw her. Not just as an obstacle, but as a person. I saw the defiance in her eyes. A fierce, untamable spirit trapped in the service of a master who saw her as nothing more than a pawn. A flicker of a memory, not my own, surfaced, a red-headed demon queen from another world. A warrior of incredible pride and passion. There was an echo of that spirit here. You have the soul of a warrior, I said, my voice unexpectedly soft. But you squander it in the service of a snake who would discard you for a single failed note. She spat on the ground near my feet. Shut up. Don't you dare talk about Lord Orochimaru like that, you Konoha bastard. Just kill me and get it over with. I tilted my head. Death is a mercy. Servitude is a cage. Is that all you can imagine for yourself? An eternity is someone else's tool. I paused, letting the words sink in. He offers you power, but it is borrowed, leashed. It will fail you, just as it failed your teammates. There is another path, one of true strength. Strength that comes from within. Strength that you command. I reached out and took their earth scroll from her pouch. She was too shocked to resist. I now had both scrolls. My mission here was done. Think on it, I said, turning to walk away. This forest will test you. Your master has abandoned you here. If you survive, and if you decide you want a purpose beyond being a disposable pawn, find me after the exams are over. My offer will stand. I left her there, Kneeling in the dirt between her unconscious comrades, her mind reeling not from a jutsu, but from a choice she had never conceived of. We reached the tower on the second day, long before the deadline. We were the fourth team to arrive. We opened the scrolls, and Iruka-sensei appeared in a puff of smoke to congratulate us. He looked at Sasuke's unconscious form, at Sakura's exhausted but determined face, and at me. Untouched. Not even dirty. He opened his mouth to ask, then closed it. The questions were piling up, and he, like everyone else, was starting to realize he might not want to know the answers. As we rested in the waiting room before the next stage, I felt the cursed seal on Sasuke's neck pulse with dark energy. He would wake soon. Changed. The first move in Orochimaru's game had been played. But the board was larger than he knew, and I was no longer just a piece upon it. I was a player, and my own prelude was just beginning. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. A Symphony of Rebellion. The tower's central hall was a pit of simmering tension. The survivors of the forest, thinned by a third, stood together in the harsh light, their faces etched with exhaustion, suspicion, and the brittle pride of those who had looked into the abyss and not fallen. Hiruzen Sarutobi stood before them, flanked by the Jonin-sensei, his expression grave. First, allow me to congratulate you all on surviving the second exam. He began, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. However, due to the unexpectedly high number of candidates who have passed, we must now hold a preliminary round before the main tournament. A projector screen flickered to life behind him, displaying the names of the 20 remaining contestants. A low murmur went through the genin. This was an unforeseen complication. Another battle to be fought on the ragged edge of their endurance. My gaze swept over them, a general assessing his troops, and his enemies. I saw the Sand siblings, standing apart. The girl, Tamari, was confident. The boy with the puppet, Konkuro, was arrogant. But the youngest, Gaara, was a different entity entirely. He wasn't a shinobi, he was a walking natural disaster. His chakra was a maelstrom of sand, blood, and a deep, screaming loneliness that vibrated in the air. It was a power born of misery, unstable and terrifying. It was a pale, pathetic echo of the Kyuubi's rage, but it was potent nonetheless. Then there was the Hyuga prodigy, Neji. He stood with his arms crossed, his pale eyes holding a contemptuous certainty. He saw the world as a rigid cage of fate, and himself as its master. He was powerful, skilled, but his vision was narrow. He was a bird who had perfected the art of pacing his cage, believing it to be the whole of the sky. A pained groan from the side of the room drew everyone's attention. Sasuke was awake. He was clutching his neck, his face contorted in pain. The cursed seal was a vortex of malevolent black chakra, pulsing like a diseased heart. Kakashi was instantly at his side. His expression grim. Kakashi-sensei. What is this? Sasuke gritted out, his body trembling. A parting gift from Orochimaru, Kakashi said, his voice low enig. H for only the nearby sensei and my own enhanced hearing to catch. A cursed seal. It feeds on your chakra and your hatred, offering you power at the cost of your soul. I can handle it, Sasuke snarled. But another wave of agony made him cry out. Don't be a fool, Kakashi said, his hands glowing with green medical chakra as he examined the seal. This thing will consume you. I can suppress it for now, but the only way to be free of it is with your own willpower. He began weaving a complex series of hand signs, a powerful sealing jutsu that would cage the parasite. I watched the interaction with a detached clarity. Kakashi's seal was a bandage on a festering wound. A temporary measure. The seal wasn't just a parasite, it was a key, designed to unlock the cage of Sasuke's ambition and hatred. Orochimaru had not given him a leash, he had given him a knife and pointed him towards his own throat. The proctor for the preliminaries, a sickly-looking Jonin named Hayate Gecko, announced the first match. The electronic board flashed, and the names settled, Uchiha Sasuke vs. Yoroi Akato. Sasuke pushed Kakashi away, stumbling to his feet. I'm fighting. The battle was short and brutal. Yoroi, one of Kabuto's teammates, had the ability to absorb chakra on contact. He pressed Sasuke, draining his stamina, forcing him back. For a moment, it looked like the Uchiha prodigy would fall in the first round. Then, the black marks of the cursed seal began to spread across his skin. A surge of dark, corrupting power flooded his system. He moved with a new, vicious speed, overwhelming Yoroi Wi. A flurry of kicks that ended with a move he had copied from Rock Lee, the Lion's Barrage. He won, but as he stood over his defeated opponent, panting, a cruel, triumphant smirk on his face, it was clear that a part of him had lost. The matches continued. Shino Aburame won with his usual silent, creepy efficiency. Konkuro defeated his opponent with a display of puppetry that was both skillful and sadistic. The atmosphere grew thick with the smell of sweat and spilled blood. I stood on the upper viewing balcony, leaning against the rail, a silent observer. My presence was a puzzle that many of the other genin were trying to solve. The loud-mouthed idiot was gone, replaced by this calm, unnervingly competent stranger. None were more captivated by this mystery than Ino Yamanaka. I could feel her gaze on me. A mixture of suspicion, curiosity, and a faint, almost imperceptible attraction to the power she sensed. Her match was called Yamanaka Ino vs. Tsurugi Masumi, another one of Kabuto's pawns. But as she walked to the arena floor, her focus wasn't on her opponent. It was on me. The fight began. Masumi, with his body-modifying jutsu, quickly wrapped his unnaturally flexible limbs around Ino, trapping her. It looked like the match was over. But Ino was a strategist. As Masumi began to crush her, she smirked. "You fell for it," she whispered. On the balcony, my attention was on the fight. But I felt it, a subtle, needle-like probe against the outer edges of my consciousness. It wasn't an attack, it was a whisper, a gentle touch. Ino, in her feigned distress, was using the chaos of her own match as a cover. She was extending a sliver of her mind, a psychic tendril, attempting to get a glimpse inside my head, to solve the riddle of Naruto Uzumaki. It was an incredibly audacious and foolish move. The moment her consciousness touched mine, I did not erect a wall. I did not push her out. I simply opened the door. For Ino, the world dissolved. One instant, she was on the arena floor, locked in her opponent's grasp. The next, she was falling through an infinite, starless void. The sounds of the arena vanished, replaced by a deafening silence that was also a roar, the Su-nd of a billion souls screaming and then being extinguished. She was a single drop of water in a cosmic ocean of memory and power that was not human. Flashes of impossible imagery burned through her mind, not as clear pictures, but as soul-shaking impressions. A sky choked with black and golden fire. A throne carved from the obsidian bones of a forgotten god. The feeling of a crown of solidified shadow settling on her brow. Its weight the burden of a million conquered worlds. A glimpse of beings made of pure light, their faces beautiful and terrible, wielding swords that sang with holy fire as they cut through legions of shadow. The taste of ash, the scent of ozone, the feeling of absolute solitude at the pinnacle of all creation. It was the sensory overload of a billion lifetimes lived in a single, terrifying instant. It was not the mind of a boy. It was the mind of a primordial force, an ancient will forged in a crucible of cosmic warfare. And in the center of it all, she felt a single, unshakable point of stillness. A cold, crimson-black star of absolute self-awareness. It turned its attention to her, a celestial body noticing a mote of dust, and the sheer pressure of its regard was enough to shatter her. On the arena floor, Ino's eyes rolled back in her head. A trickle of blood ran from her nose. Her body went limp, not from Masumi's hold, but from profound psychic shock. Her mind, unable to process the sheer scale of what it had touched, had forcibly shut itself down. The match was declared over. The medics rushed to her side. As they carried her off, I met the worried gaze of her teammates. Shikamaru and Choji. Shikamaru, the lazy genius, looked from Ino's unconscious form to me, his brow furrowed. He hadn't seen what happened. But he was smart enough to know that a simple fight shouldn't have caused that kind of reaction. He had a new variable for his calculations, and it was troublesome. The board flickered again. My name appeared. Uzumaki Naruto vs. Inuzuka Kiba. A cocky grin spread across Kiba's face. Finally, talk about a lucky draw, he barked, Akamaru yipping in agreement from atop his head. This'll be over in 10 seconds. I hopped down from the balcony, landing silently on the arena floor. I didn't look at him. I looked at the proctor. Ready when you are. Kiba bristled at the dismissal. Hey, don't you ignore me, you loser. The match began. Kiba didn't waste a second. Ninja art. Man-beast clone. He shouted, and Akamaru transformed into a perfect replica of him. They charged, a feral whirlwind of claws and fangs. It was his signature opening move, Tunneling Fang. Designed to overwhelm with speed and ferocity. It was also predictable. I stood my ground. As the two spinning forms converged on me, I didn't dodge left or right. I dropped, my body sinking so low to the ground I was almost sitting, and the two Kiba clones shot over my head, crashing into each other where I had been standing. They untangled themselves, growling. Lucky move, Kiba spat. Luck is the residue of design, Inuzuka, I said, my voice conversational, yet carrying across the entire hall. Your attack is linear. You sacrifice all subtlety for a momentary burst of speed. It only works on opponents who are surprised by it. I was not. His face flushed with anger. Shut up. Let's see you handle this. 4 legs technique. He and Akamaru dropped to all fours. Their movements becoming even more bestial, their chakra flaring. They were faster now, circling me like wolves, looking for an opening. An improvement, I noted calmly. You increase your speed and sensory input. But you also expose your neck and spine. Your posture is now that of an animal, not a warrior. Your attacks will be stronger, but your defense is now a joke. Every word was a scalpel, dissecting his technique, stripping away his confidence. He roared in frustration and lunged. This time it wasn't a straight line. He zigzagged, feinting, trying to throw me off. It was pointless. I could see the intent in his muscles, read the path of his attack in the shift of his weight. I met his charge, my movements precise and economical. I didn't block his claws. I deflected them with the back of my wrist, using his own momentum to spin him off balance. As he stumbled past, I jabbed 2 fingers into the cluster of nerves at the base of his neck. He yelped, his entire right side going numb for a second. Akamaru, seeing his partner in trouble, leapt at my face. I didn't even look at him. My hand shot up and gently caught him midair, my fingers finding the pressure point behind his ears that made dogs calm down. Akamaru's ferocious snarl turned into a confused whimper, his tail giving a tentative wag. I set him down gently on the floor. Kiba stared, his jaw hanging open. Akamaru, what the hell? Your bond is your greatest strength, I said, turning my attention back to him. But you rely on him too much. You have become 2 halves of a single fighter, and without him, you are incomplete. That was the final straw. His pride shattered. Kiba pulled out 2 soldier pills. He tossed one to Akamaru and swallowed the other. Their chakra exploded, turning a violent red. They used their combination transformation, turning into a massive, 2-headed wolf. The power radiating from it was immense. This is the end for you, Naruto. Gatsuga. The giant wolf spun, becoming a veritable tornado of destruction that tore up the arena floor as it shot towards me. This was his ultimate attack. An inescapable, all-or-nothing move. I didn't move to intercept it. I simply watched it come. At the last possible second, I threw 2 kunai, not at the wolf, but at the floor a few feet in front of me. They landed with a clatter. Then I performed a single hand sign. Release. 2 smoke bombs I had placed there earlier detonated. The thick smoke wasn't meant to hide me. It was meant to assault his nose. The 2-headed wolf, its sense of smell now amplified 100 times, CRA. Shed into the smoke cloud and immediately reeled back, howling in agony, completely disoriented. Before it could recover, I was moving. I ran straight into the disoriented beast, leaping onto its back. I drove my elbow into the spine, exactly where the 2 bodies joined, and channeled a precise pulse of chakra. Not a destructive jutsu, but a disruptive one. The transformation shattered. Kiba and Akamaru fell to the floor. Dazed and separated, I landed silently behind Kiba, my hand resting gently on the back of his neck. It's over, I said. He lay there, panting, defeated. He hadn't landed a single blow. I had dismantled him, piece by piece, not with overwhelming power, but with flawless tactics and psychological warfare. Hayate declared me the winner. The crowd was silent, not with awe, but with a deep, unsettling confusion. They had just watched a boy they knew as a failure systematically humiliate one of the clan heirs without breaking a sweat. It didn't make sense. As I walked back towards the stairs to the balcony, My path took me past the assembled dignitaries from other lands. Most watched me with clinical interest. But then my eyes met his. He was dressed in the simple but elegant robes of a diplomat from the land of tea, his face serene and handsome, an aura of gentle wisdom about him. But his eyes were ancient, and they held the cold, passionless light of a dying star. There was no hatred in them. There was no anger. There was only the calm, absolute certainty of a physician looking at a plague that needed to be purged. In that instant, a primal, instinctual part of Viridian's soul screamed a name buried under eons of ash and blood. Malthal, my ancient foe, the Archon of Wisdom, the angel of death who had hunted my kind across galaxies and dimensions. He had followed me here. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a gesture of acknowledgement between two ancient players on a new board. The game had just escalated beyond the petty squabbles of shinobi villages. An old war, a holy war, had just found its new battlefield. I broke eye contact and continued up the stairs, my expression unchanged. The Chunin exams were no longer a mere stepping stone. They were now the opening gambit in a war for the soul of this world. And as I looked across the hall at the remaining contestants, at Sasuke clutching his cursed neck, at Gaara radiating his lonely madness, and at Ino, who was now conscious and staring at me with a terrifying new understanding in her eyes, I knew one thing for certain. The prelude was over. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. Dance of the Damned. The month between the preliminaries and the final round of the Chunin exams was a crucible. For the other genin, it was a time of frantic training, a desperate scramble to learn new jutsu and hone old skills under the tutelage of their masters. For me, it was a time of integration. The floodgates of Viridian's soul had opened, and every night, my dreams were a chaotic torrent of memories not my own. Duels fought on crumbling moons, strategic campaigns waged against legions of seraphim, the silent solitude of a throne overlooking a universe of conquered stars. I was not just learning who I had been. I was deciding who I would be. Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, had arrived in the village, summoned by the third Hokage to investigate Orochimaru and, more importantly, to observe me. He found me not at a training ground, but in the Konoha Library, surrounded by scrolls on theoretical physics, advanced fuinjutsu, and the history of the Uzumaki clan. He tried to teach me his Rasengan, a powerful A-rank technique. I mastered its principles in 3 days, not through brute effort, but by seeing the flawed logic in his teaching method and correcting it. I saw the technique not as a swirling ball of chakra, but as a contained vortex, a miniature galaxy held in the palm of my hand. My perfect, silent execution of the jutsu left the Sannin speechless, his usual boisterous persona replaced by a quiet, calculating stare. He knew, just as Kakashi knew, that he was not dealing with the Kyuubi's vessel anymore. He was dealing with something far older. The day of the finals arrived, bright and clear. The stadium was packed, a roaring sea of civilians and shinobi from every nation. I stood with the other finalists in the center of the arena, feeling the weight of their thousands of gazes. They were here for a spectacle, for blood and glory. I was here to make a statement. My gaze drifted up to the cage box. The cage sat beside Hiruzen, his face veiled, his presence a discordant note in the symphony of the day. Beside him, in the dignitary section, sat Malthal. Our eyes met across the distance. He gave a serene, almost pleasant smile. It was the smile of a patient executioner who knew that all life eventually ended. The first match was announced, the electronic board flashing our names, Uzumaki Naruto vs. Hyuga Neji. A murmur of disappointment went through the crowd. The Uchiha prodigy was slated to fight the Sand Demon later. This was seen as a mere appetizer. The Dead Last versus the Hyuga genius. The outcome was considered a foregone conclusion. We walked to the center of the arena. Neji stood with his arms crossed, his pale eyes alight with a cold, condescending fire. So, the fate of the failure is to be offered up to the prodigy for the crowd's entertainment, he said. His voice carrying in the sudden quiet. Do yourself a favor and forfeit. You cannot fight destiny. Destiny, I replied, my voice calm and clear, is the excuse of those who are too weak or too afraid to forge their own path. It is the cage you have built for yourself, Hyuga. Do not mistake its bars for the shape of the world. The proctor began the match. Neji didn't wait. He shot forward, His movements a blur of white and black. The gentle fist is the ultimate taijutsu of Konoha. Your crude brawling is an insult to it. His palm struck out, aimed at my chest. His fingers, coated in a precise layer of chakra, were designed to inject that chakra into my tenketsu, my chakra points, shutting them down. It was a crippling, unstoppable attack. I moved. I didn't use demonic speed. I used flawless foresight. I saw the path of his attack, the tension in his shoulder, the angle of his approach. I sidestepped, my body pivoting on the ball of my foot, and his hand passed harmlessly through the space where my heart had been. Your style is impressive, I said, as he spun to face me, his eyes wide with surprise. But it relies on a single, successful strike. As no answer for an opponent who simply refuses to be hit. He came at me again, a furious barrage of palm strikes. 8 trigrams, 2 palms. 4 palms, 8 palms. I was a ghost in the storm. I flowed around his attacks, my feet never wasting a single motion. I wasn't just dodging, I was studying. I watched the flow of his chakra, the rotation of his hips, the subtle blind spot at the back of his neck that even the 360-degree vision of the Byakugan possessed. 16 palms. 32 palms. He was growing frustrated, his perfect composure cracking. He was a master of a rigid, perfect system. And I was an element of chaos that refused to fit within its calculations. It's useless, he snarled, leaping back. You can run, but the moment I touch you, it is over. Your fate as a loser was sealed the day you were born. You talk of fate, yet you are blind to your own, I said, finally stopping my defensive maneuvering. You, a member of the branch house, branded with a seal that ensures your servitude to the main house. You preach about inescapable destiny because to believe otherwise would be to admit the truth. You are a slave who is too proud to admit he wears a chain. A vein pulsed on his forehead. My words had struck the very core of his being. His rage, cold and controlled until now, exploded. You know nothing. I will show you the inescapable cage of fate. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. He moved faster than ever before, a whirlwind of deadly strikes, sealing off my escape routes. This was his ultimate technique. There was no room to dodge. So I didn't. I met his charge head-on. As his first 2 fingers jabbed towards my chest, I didn't block. I moved my torso a fraction of an inch, and the strike that would have sealed my heart's chakra point glanced off my sternum. At the same time, my own hand shot out, not as a fist, but with 2 fingers extended. I struck the inside of his wrist, a precise, jarring blow that disrupted the flow of chakra to his hand for a split second. His attack faltered. His perfect, 64-strike sequence was broken at the 3rd blow. His eyes widened in absolute shock. Your technique is flawless, I said, standing inside his guard. My voice a low whisper only he could hear. But the user is not. Your rage makes your movements infinitesimally predictable. Your pride makes you overconfident. These are the flaws in your perfect fate. Before he could recover, I drove my palm into his chest. It was not a gentle fist strike. It was a focused, concussive blast of my own chakra. It sent him flying across the arena, skidding to a halt at the far wall. He lay there, gasping, not just from the blow, but from the shattering of his entire worldview. I had won. I had not used the Kyuubi. I had not used demonic power. I had used pure, analytical combat. And I had proven that his philosophy, his entire existence, was built on a lie. As the proctor declared me the winner, a shocked silence hung over the stadium below, re-erupting into a roar of disbelief and excitement. I gave Neji one last look. I hadn't just defeated him, I had given him the most painful gift of all, a choice. The next several matches were a blur. The real event was coming. Uchiha Sasuke vs. Sabaku no Gaara. Sasuke arrived at the last possible second with Kakashi, showcasing a new, blistering speed and a mastery of a new jutsu, the Chidori. The fight began. It was a clash of titans. Sasuke's lightning-fast taijutsu against Gaara's absolute defense of sand. The Uchiha was brilliant, pushing Gaara further than anyone had before. But the sand was relentless, a living entity that protected its master. Finally, Sasuke saw his opening. He leapt to the stadium wall, the sound of 1,000 chirping birds filling the air as lightning crackled in his hand. He shot forward, A bolt of pure, piercing light. The Chidori. It slammed into Gaara's sand sphere. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a crack appeared. Sasuke's hand had pierced the ultimate defense. A pained, inhuman shriek echoed from within. That was the trigger. A wave of genjutsu energy washed over the stadium, white feathers falling from the sky. The civilians and lower-level shinobi slumped in their seats, asleep. From the cage box, the attack began. The Kazekage, Orochimaru in disguise, attacked Hiruzen. Sound and sand ninja poured into the stadium from all sides. The Konoha crush had begun. While the Jonin leapt into action, forming a defensive perimeter, my focus was on the arena floor. Gaara, clutching his bleeding shoulder, was being escorted away by his siblings. But his chakra was boiling over. He was losing control. Sakura, I commanded, my voice cutting through her panic. Wake Sasuke. Get him out of here. Find Kakashi. This is not your fight. I bit my thumb and slammed my hand on the ground, summoning a massive toad, Gamabunta, not for a fight, but as a distraction and a barrier. Go, now. She didn't argue. She saw the look in my eyes and knew that an order had been given. I leapt from the toad's back, my body a blur, easily evading the skirmishes breaking out across the village. I could feel Gaara's chakra signature, a beacon of pain and rage, heading towards the forest. I followed. I found him in a clearing, the trees groaning and cracking around him. He was already transforming. Sand swirled, encasing his body, forming a massive, tanuki-like creature. The one-tailed Shukaku. I will kill you all. The voice boomed, a monstrous fusion of Gaara's and the Bijus. I will prove my existence with your blood. Sasuke, who had caught up, tried to intervene. But he was exhausted. The cursed seal flared, but he was no match for a rampaging Biju. The Shukaku swatted him aside like a fly, leaving him pinned under a tree. I landed silently on a branch opposite the monster. This is as far as you go. The creature's massive head swiveled, its huge, yellow eyes fixing on me. Another insect. I will crush you. It unleashed a volley of massive air bullets, each one capable of leveling a building. I didn't move. The crimson in my eyes bled outwards, consuming the blue, and my sclera turned a solid, glossy black. The air around my head shimmered, and two horns made of pure, solidified shadow traced their phantom shape into existence. My chakra, my very presence, shifted from the blue of a shinobi to the cold, oppressive black and red of a demonic knight. I raised my hand, and the black longsword, abyss, materialized from particles of light and shadow. I swung the sword, a single, lazy arc. A wave of pure, unseen force erupted from the blade, meeting the air bullets head-on. There was no explosion. The compressed air was simply, unmade. Disintegrated. The Shukaku roared, a sound of confusion and rage. It had never faced a power that didn't just counter it, but negated it. You are a creature of rage and sand, I said, my voice now a low, resonant baritone that held the echo of ages. A child lashing out in a tantrum. I have seen stellar flares with more focus than your anger. I vanished from the branch. I reappeared directly in front of the beast's face, standing on a wave of sand it had sent to crush me. I ran up the wave, my sword held in a reverse grip. The Shukaku swiped at me with a colossal claw made of compressed sand. I didn't dodge. I swung my sword. The black blade didn't try to shatter the claw. It sliced through the chakra holding the sand together. The claw dissolved, collapsing into a harmless cascade of grit. I landed on its shoulder, my feet sinking slightly into the sandy hide. I could feel the terrified, screaming boy trapped within. I plunged my hand deep into the sand, past the Biju's chakra, until my fingers touched Gaara's real skin. I didn't preach about friendship. I didn't offer salvation. I offered him a truth far colder and more absolute. I projected a single, searing image from Viridian's memory into his mind. The sight of a lone, obsidian throne floating in the black void between galaxies, and the crushing, soul-deep loneliness of a being who had outlived stars. You scream because you are lonely, my voice echoed directly in his mind, a power beyond telepathy. I'm silent because I have been alone for ages. Your cage is of sand and flesh. Mine was a throne of cosmic dust. You are a footnote in the story of pain. Know your place. The Shukaku's form shuddered violently. The raw, mindless rage was pierced by a shock so profound it silenced it. The sand construct cracked, crumbled, and fell away, revealing the small, exhausted form of Gaara, who looked up at me with eyes that no longer held malice, but a vast, terrifying new understanding. He had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had shown him he was nothing more than a child standing at its edge. He fainted. In the chaos of the invasion's retreat, as the surviving sound and sand ninja fled, I found them. Chiyuya and her 2 comrades, left for dead, abandoned by Orochimaru as the failures they were. Your master has left you to die, I said, landing before them. Chiyuya scrambled to her feet, her flute held like a weapon, her face a mask of defiance and fear. He'll be back for us. No, he won't, I said, my voice flat. You were a tool for a single task. You failed. You have been discarded. I looked her in the eyes. My offer still stands. A banner to fight under, not a leash to be held by. A purpose, not a function. Choose. She looked at her wounded comrades, at the retreating backs of the army that had left them behind, and then at me. At the boy who had defeated Abiju and offered her a choice instead of a blade. She lowered her flute, a torrent of curses spilling from her lips, but her actions spoke louder than her words. She gave a sharp, angry nod. She was the first. As he dust settled over a wounded but victorious Konoha, he approached me. I was standing in the ruins of the arena, looking up at the broken roof of the cage box where the 3rd Hokage had fallen. Malthal, still in his human guise, walked to my side, his footsteps silent on the rubble. A regrettable, yet necessary, culling of the unworthy, he said, his voice as serene as a calm sea. You fought with a certain efficiency. I protect what is mine, I replied, not looking at him. An admirable sentiment, he conceded. But the very ground you stand on is tainted. Stained, not by this petty war, but by the stain of your demonic existence. It is an anomaly, a corruption of the natural order that I cannot abide. He finally turned to look at me, and in his eyes, I saw the cold light of divine judgment. I offer you this one courtesy, for the echoes of what we once were, he said. Erase yourself from this world. Take your unnatural power and fade into nothingness. If you refuse, I shall be forced to unwrite the existence of this entire reality to cleanse it of your presence. The choice is yours. He smiled gently, a gesture utterly devoid of warmth, and then walked away, disappearing into the chaos of the wounded village. The war was over, and a new, far more terrible war, was about to begin. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The sunken city of Uzushio. The rain fell on Konoha like a veil of tears. It washed the blood from the streets and the dust from the broken rooftops, but it could not cleanse the grief that had settled deep into the village's bones. The funeral for the 3rd Hokage was a solemn affair. A sea of black umbrellas and bowed heads. I stood in the back, a silent observer. I felt the sorrow of the people, the aching loss of a leader who had been a grandfather to them all. But within my own soul, there was only a cold, quiet respect for a warrior who had died in battle. Viridian had seen empires fall and stars burn out. The passing of one old man, however noble, was but a single note in an endless, tragic symphony. In the power vacuum left by Hiruzen's death, the village was a wounded animal. The elders, Homura and Kaharu, scrambled to maintain order. Danzo, a shadow in the background, consolidated his influence, his root operatives moving through the wounded city like poison in the veins. It was clear a new leader was needed, and the name on everyone's lips was Tsunade Senju. The last of the Sannin, the world's greatest medical ninja. Jiraiya found me in my newly assigned apartment, a larger, more secure dwelling befitting a Chunin exam finalist who had single-handedly stopped a Biju. He was packing a travel scroll, his usual boisterous energy replaced by a grim purpose. Pack your things, kid, he said, not meeting my eye. We're leaving. The elders have tasked me with finding Tsunade and offering her the hat. You're coming with me. It'll be a good training trip, and it'll get you out of the village while the vultures are circling. He was talking about Danzo. He was trying to protect me. It was a commendable, if short-sighted, impulse. We're not going after Tsunade, I said, my voice flat. I was sitting at a low table, a map of the elemental nations spread out before me. My finger was resting on a small, storm-shrouded archipelago off the coast of the Land of Fire, the former land of whirlpools. Jiraiya stopped packing. What did you say? This is a direct order from the council, Naruto. It's not up for debate. Everything is up for debate when the survival of this reality is the stake, I countered, finally looking up at him. I let him see the cold certainty in my crimson eyes. Malthus is here. He is an archon, a being of immense power from another dimension. He sees me as a plague, and he has threatened to unwrite the existence of this entire reality, to cleanse it. Finding a new Hokage is a political necessity. Finding a way to fight a god is a matter of survival. Jiraiya stared, his mouth slightly agape. He had sensed the power of the man in the diplomat's robes, but he had no context for it. My words were insane, the ramblings of a madman, yet the absolute conviction with which I spoke sent a chill down his spine. I need answers, Jiraiya. I continued, my voice calm and rational. And they aren't in a sake den with a gambling addict. They are in my ancestral home. Uzushio. The Uzumaki were masters of fuinjutsu, seals that could bind demons. Perhaps they knew how to bind angels, too. I was giving him a logical framework he could accept, a sliver of the truth that fit into his shinobi worldview. He wrestled with it for a long moment, torn between duty and the terrifying new reality I presented. Even if you're right, he finally conceded, his voice low, Uzushio is a death trap. The entire island is a maze of active, lethal seals and the whirlpools around it are impassable. No one has set foot there since its destruction and lived to tell the tale. Then we will be the first, I said. But we'll need the right keys to open the right doors. My first stop was the Hyuga compound. I found Hinata in the main dojo, enduring a brutal training session under the critical eye of her father, Hiyashi. She was being punished for her perceived weakness, for the hesitation he saw in her. I walked onto the polished wooden floor, my footsteps silent, and the entire training session came to a halt. The assembled Hyuga stared at me, an outsider who had dared to intrude on their sacred space. Hiyashi's gaze was like ice. Uzumaki, you are not welcome here. I'm not here for you, I said, my eyes finding Hinata's. She was bruised, exhausted, but she stood a little straighter when she saw me. I'm here for her. I have a mission of critical importance to the village, and I require her unique abilities. My daughter is not fit for A-rank missions, Hiyashi sneered. She is a failure. Your definition of failure seems to be anyone who doesn't fit the rigid mold you've created, I retorted, my voice sharp. You see with your eyes. But you are blind. Her Byakugan is more perceptive, more sensitive than any I have ever encountered, including your own. She sees the truth of things, not just the surface. I need that truth. Hinata, I said, my voice softening as I addressed her directly, I need your help. I am going to a place of great danger, a place protected by ancient illusions and seals that are invisible to the naked eye. I need you to be my sight. Will you come? It was more than a request. It was a validation. It was an offer of purpose. In front of her entire clan, in front of the father who had belittled her. I had declared her essential. She looked at her father's furious face, then back at me. A fire I had never seen before kindled in her pale eyes. It was the first spark of her rebellion. Yes, she said, her voice clear and strong. I will. My second stop was the temporary barracks where the few loyal sound ninja were being held. Chiyuya was in a cell, leaning against the wall, her expression a mixture of boredom and simmering rage. When I entered, she shot to her feet. About time you showed up, asshole, she spat. Are you springing me or am I going to have to level this dump myself? I'm taking you on a trip, I said, unlocking the cell door. I have a task that requires your specific talents. Uzushio is protected by seals that are bound by harmonic resonance. A sonic key, if you will. I need you to find the right note. She raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on her lips. So the big, bad demon boy needs my flute after all. This should be fun. She fell into step behind me. Not like a prisoner, but like a soldier who had just received her marching orders. We met Jiraiya at the village gates under the cover of a moonless night. He looked at my companions, the disgraced Hyuga heiress and the foul-mouthed enemy Kunoichi, and shook his head, a look of profound resignation on his face. Kid, your idea of a team is going to give the council a collective aneurysm. The council is trying to patch a leaking ship, I replied, looking out at the dark road ahead. I'm trying to stop the hurricane that's coming to sink it. The journey to the coast was swift and silent. We sailed on a small, chartered vessel, leaving the land of fire behind. As we approached the waters of the former land of whirlpools, the sea began to change. The calm waters turned violent, churning into massive, ship-devouring whirlpools. The sky grew dark, and a perpetual, unnatural storm raged above the archipelago. "This is it," Jiraiya said, his hand on the ship's railing. "This is as far as a normal ship can go. The rest of the way, we're on our own." We abandoned the ship, leaping across the churning water, our chakra control the only thing keeping us from being dragged into the depths. We landed on the shores of the main island. The ruins of the city of Uzushio were a jagged silhouette against the stormy sky. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of salt and old, sorrowful magic. An invisible pressure pushed against us, a barrier designed to repel all intruders. "Hinata," I commanded. She nodded, her hands flashing into a seal. "Byakugan." The veins around her temples bulged. Her vision expanded, piercing the veil of the physical world. She gasped. "It's incredible. It's not one seal. It's 1,000, layered on top of each other, all woven into a single, island-wide barrier. The chakra pathways are like a spider's web, impossibly complex. But there's a flaw. A single point where all the pathways converge. It's a harmonic anchor. It resonates at a frequency that is audible." "To Yuya," I said. The redhead grinned, her flute already at her lips. "Leave it to me." She began to play, not a genjutsu, but a series of probing, exploratory notes. She listened to the hum of the barrier, a sound only she and Hinata could perceive. She adjusted her pitch, her fingers dancing over the flute. For 10 minutes, she played a complex, searching melody. A musical duel with the ghost of the Uzumaki clan. Then she found it. She played a single, impossibly high, piercing note. The air vibrated violently. For a single, breathtaking second, a ring doorway of light appeared in the barrier before us. "Go, now," Jiraiya yelled. We shot through the opening just as it snapped shut behind us. We were in. The city was a graveyard of crumbling spiral towers and flooded streets. But the physical destruction was nothing compared to the spiritual decay. Ghostly, translucent figures drifted through the ruins, their faces twisted in silent screams. The corrupted souls of the slain Uzumaki. As we moved deeper into the city, they noticed us. They converged, their spectral forms drawn to the warmth of our life force. "These are spirits," Jiraiya shouted, launching a massive fireball at the approaching horde. The flames passed harmlessly through them. "Ninjutsu is useless. Don't fight them," I said, stepping forward. My eyes shifted to crimson and black. I didn't draw my sword. I let my own spiritual pressure, the ancient, overwhelming presence of Viridian, wash over the area. It was not an attack. It was a declaration of hierarchy. It was the presence of a primordial predator entering a field of lesser ghosts. The spirits recoiled. Their tormented rage was replaced by a primal, instinctual fear. They bowed their heads, not in reverence, but in submission to a power so far beyond their own they could do nothing else. They parted before us, creating a clear path towards the center of the city. Jiraiya, Hinata, and Tayuya stared, utterly speechless. I had not defeated the spirits. I had commanded them. Hinata, using her Byakugan, guided us through the labyrinthine ruins to a massive, sealed stone structure at the city's heart. It was a vault, its doors covered in the most complex fuinjutsu matrix any of us had ever seen. A line of ancient text was carved above the door. Jiraiya read it aloud. "Only the warden who embraces the storm may enter." He stroked his chin. A riddle. The Uzumaki were the Kyuubi's jailers. The warden, and the Kyuubi is a storm of chakra. It must be referring to the Jinchuriki. "Close," I said, but incomplete. I stepped forward and placed my hand on the door. I first channeled my Uzumaki chakra, the vibrant blue energy of my bloodline. The outer rings of the seal glowed in response. Then, I reached deeper, and allowed the cold, crimson-black energy of Viridian to flow from my arm. The inner core of the seal blazed with a dark, terrifying light. I was the warden, but I was also the storm, the echo from another world. I embraced both halves of my soul. With a deep, grinding groan that shook the island, the great stone doors swung inward. The air inside was still, heavy with the weight of forgotten secrets. The vault was a vast library, its walls lined with thousands of scrolls and stone tablets. This was the legacy of the Uzumaki clan. We spent hours exploring its depths, the truth of my heritage unfolding before me. They were not just a clan of seal masters. They were the wardens of the Veil. The scrolls depicted charts of dimensional planes, theories on spatial fissures, and detailed records of incursions from other realities. They knew of the Archons, beings of pure order they called the Golden Host. They knew of the Echoes, chaotic entities of immense power like Viridian, whom they called the Primordial Storms. The Uzumaki's Fuinjutsu was their weapon, their shield against cosmic threats. They were the secret guardians of their entire reality. We found one scroll that made Jiraiya's blood run cold. It detailed the sealing of the 9 tails. It was no accident that my mother, Kushina, was the Jinchuriki. The Uzumaki bloodline wasn't just strong enough to contain a Biju. It was the only bloodline capable of acting as a stable anchor for extra-dimensional entities. When Minato sealed the Kyuubi inside me, he was unknowingly performing a ritual the Uzumaki had perfected for a different purpose. He hadn't just trapped a demon. He had bound my soul, the reincarnated soul of a primordial storm, to the only vessel that could prevent it from either overwhelming this world or being rejected by it. At the very center of the vault, resting on a simple stone pedestal, was a katana. It was a simple, unadorned blade in a black lacquered sheath. But it pulsed with a faint, familiar energy. It was a soul anchor, a specialized seal in the form of a weapon, designed to contain the spiritual fragment of a captured echo. As I reached out and my fingers brushed against the hilt, I felt a jolt of recognition. The fragment of soul stuff trapped within was a part of me, a piece of Viridian's essence that had been shed or defeated in this reality in some forgotten age. The moment I made contact, the seal on the sword shattered. A torrent of pure, raw demonic energy, a billion forgotten memories, and the cold, hard wisdom of 1,000 battles flooded into me. It was not a violent takeover. It was a homecoming, a missing piece of my soul snapping back into place. The integration was instantaneous. A shockwave of crimson and black energy erupted from my body, rolling out across the entire island. Outside, the perpetual storm broke. The malevolent spirits of the dead were cleansed, their tormented souls finally finding peace. For the first time in decades, sunlight shone on the ruins of Uzushio. I stood there, my hand on the hilt of the now dormant sword, my mind a sea of newfound clarity. The fragmented memories were gone, replaced by a complete, integrated consciousness. I was Naruto Uzumaki. I was Viridian. There was no longer a separation. Hinata, Chiyuya, and Jiraiya looked at me. I was the same, yet I was infinitely different. The last vestiges of the boy I had been were gone, burned away by the influx of my own ancient soul. I looked at my companions. Hinata, the girl who saw the truth of my soul and was not afraid. Chiyuya, the defiant warrior who had chosen my banner over servitude. They were the first of my new house, my new clan. Jiraiya was the witness, the old guard forced to accept a new, terrifying paradigm. I walked out of the vault and into the sunlight, the ancient katana in my hand. I looked out at the now calm sea. Malthul was not just my enemy. He was an enemy of this reality, a force of cosmic order that would sterilize the beautiful, chaotic world I had come to call my own. The ancient duty of the Uzumaki, the wardens of the Veil, had fallen to me. And I would not fail. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Divine Gambit. The sunlight on Uzushio was a fragile, fleeting thing. We returned to the mainland not as a disparate group of shinobi, but as a unit forged in the heart of a dead city, bound by a secret that transcended the petty politics of the ninja world. Jiraiya was quiet, his mind grappling with the cosmic scale of the conflict I had revealed. Chiyuya was defiant as ever, but her insults now held a grudging respect. She had seen a power that dwarfed Orochimaru's and had been offered a place beside it. And Hinata was changed. The timid girl who had left Konoha was gone, replaced by a young woman with a core of quiet steel. She walked beside me, her Byakugan no longer just a tool for observation, but a lens through which she saw the new, terrifying shape of the world. Our return journey was cut short by the arrival of a Konoha messenger hawk, its message urgent and grim. It was not a summons from the council. It was a declaration of war. The land of iron, the neutral, samurai-led nation to the north, had declared Konoha a harborer of a great demonic evil that threatened to consume the world. Backed by a coalition of smaller, frightened nations, they had amassed an army on the borders of the Land of Fire. The message was clear: surrender the demon vessel, Naruto Uzumaki, or face total annihilation. Jiraiya read the scroll, his face hardening. Malthal, he growled. This is his move, I said. My gaze fixed on the northern horizon. A direct assault would be too obvious, it would unite the other great nations against him. So instead, he plays the role of a savior. He doesn't attack with legions of angels. He attacks with an army of manipulated, terrified mortals. He's not just trying to kill me. He's trying to turn the entire world against me. Malthal's MBIT was brilliant in its insidious simplicity. He hadn't lied to the Land of Iron. He had simply told them a skewed version of the truth. He would have shown them a vision of my power, the crimson and black energy. The demonic form I took to fight Shukaku. He would have presented it as a world-ending threat, a plague of darkness, and positioned himself as a benevolent, divine guide who could help them purge it. He had turned their honor, their piety, and their fear into a weapon. By the time we reached Konoha, the village was in a state of controlled panic. War banners were being raised, and the streets swarmed with shinobi being mobilized to the northern front. The council, now led by Tsunade, whom Jiraiya's agents had located and convinced while we were in Uzushio, was in chaos. They were a council of ninja, masters of espionage and combat. They had no experience in global diplomacy or full-scale conventional warfare. Tsunade, her face a mask of stress and disbelief, slammed her fist on the table of the war room. They demand we hand over a Konoha shinobi, a child who just saved the village. Have they lost their minds? Danzo, a shadow in the corner, spoke with his usual cold pragmatism. Their minds are irrelevant. Their army is real. We are still weak from Orochimaru's invasion. A prolonged war on this scale is not a battle we can afford to fight. Sacrificing one piece to save the board is the logical move. He was more than willing to give me to them. It would solve his problem and save the village. We do not sacrifice our own. Tsunade roared. Then what do you propose, Hokage? Danzo countered. Do you have a plan to defeat an army of 50,000 samurai with our depleted forces? I walked into the war room, my presence silencing the argument. Jiraiya, Hinata, and Tayuya followed. Their expressions grim. Every eye turned to me, the cause of the crisis. You won't have to, I said, my voice cutting through the tension. This is not a war against the Land of Iron. This is an attack on me. I will be the one to answer it. Tsunade stared at me, her brow furrowed. Naruto, what are you talking about? This isn't a Chunin exam match. This is war. No, I corrected. This is a strategic decapitation. Malthal has corrupted their leadership. Their general, Mifune, is a man of legendary honor. He would not lead a war of aggression unless he was convinced it was a holy crusade. Break the head of the snake, and the body will wither. You intend to face an entire army alone. Danzo scoffed. I intend to end this war before it truly begins, I replied. I turned to Tsunade. Hokage-sama, I need you to trust me. Give me command of a small, elite unit. A scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Our objective will not be to defeat their army, but to neutralize its leadership and expose the lie that is driving them. Tsunade looked from my calm, confident face to Jiraiya, who gave a slow, deliberate nod. She was a gambler by nature, and this was the biggest bet of her life. Who do you need? Kakashi, for his tactical experience. Might Guy, for his sheer disruptive power. And my team. I gestured to Hinata and to Yuya. My eyes and my voice. The plan was audacious. While the bulk of Konoha's forces created a defensive line to stall the main army, my small strike force would use the cover of night to infiltrate the enemy's command camp, deep behind their lines. The objective: confront Mifune, break Malthal's influence over him, and force a retreat. We moved like ghosts through the northern forests, a phantom unit slipping past enemy patrols. Kakashi and D-Guy were a study in contrasts, the calm, analytical shinobi and the roaring embodiment of youthful passion. But both deferred to my leadership. They had seen what I could do, and they understood that the old rules no longer applied. Hinata was our guide, Her Byakugan pierced the darkness and the camouflage jutsu of the samurai patrols. She saw their chakra, their movements, their numbers, Aloan. G is to move through their territory as if it were our own. As we neared the command camp, a sprawling city of tents and banners under the cold northern stars, the spiritual pressure became palpable. Malthul is here, I said. My voice low. His influence is like a poison in the air. It's a divine genjutsu, feeding their fear and twisting their honor into zealotry. How do we fight something like that? Guy asked, his usual enthusiasm tempered by the oppressive atmosphere. We don't, I said. We cut through it. I turned to Tayuya. Get ready. The command tent was a massive pavilion, guarded by the elite guard of the samurai. A direct assault was suicide. But we weren't making a direct assault. Kakashi and Guy created the diversion, a series of coordinated lightning and fire attacks on the camp's supply lines. Miles to the east, the chaos drew the attention of the main guard, pulling them away from the command center. In that window, we moved. We were almost at the tent when they appeared. 4 figures, clad in shining, silvery armor that seemed to be forged from moonlight. They held no weapons, yet they radiated a power that made Kakashi's Sharingan spin and Guy's skin crawl. They were Archons, Malthul's lieutenants, the demon child and his puppets, one of them said, his voice a chorus of harmonious, yet utterly cold, tones. Your journey ends here. The Archon of Wisdom has decreed your corruption must be cleansed. Take care of them, I said to Kakashi and Guy, my focus on the tent behind them. Do not try to kill them. Just keep them busy. Guy roared, opening the 6th gate, the Gate of Joy. His body erupting in a green aura. Kakashi's hand crackled with lightning. The 2 legendary Jonin of Konoha launched themselves at the angelic beings. As their battle erupted, a clash of shinobi arts against divine power, I turned to my own team. Hinata, find Mifune's chakra. Lock onto him. Tayuya, on my mark. We bypassed the fight, slipping like shadows towards the pavilion. Inside, I could feel him. Mifune, the general, kneeling in meditation before a simple war table. And standing behind him, his hand resting on the samurai's shoulder, was Malthul, his human guise radiating an aura of absolute, tranquil certainty. He looked up as we entered, his serene smile never wavering. I knew you would come, Echo. It is in your nature to be drawn to the heart of the conflict. Mifune rose, his hand on the hilt of his legendary katana. His eyes were glazed over, filled with a righteous, fanatical light. Demon, your time of desecration is over. By my honor, I will purge your stain from this world. His mind is completely ensnared in Malthul's web of truth, I said, not to Malthul, but to my teammates. He cannot be reasoned with. Tayuya, now. Tayuya raised her demonic flute to her lips. She didn't play a genjutsu to trap the mind. She played a single, dissonant, screeching chord. It was a wave of pure, chaotic sound, a frequency designed not to trick the senses, but to shatter the perfect, divine harmony of Malthul's influence. The serene atmosphere in the tent warped. Malthul winced, a flicker of annoyance crossing his perfect features. Fanatical light in Mifune's eyes flickered, replaced by a flash of confusion. The divine genjutsu, for a split second, was broken. That was all the opening I needed. I didn't attack Mifune. I walked past him, my gaze locked on the Archon. Your mistake, Malthul, is that you believe these people are your puppets. You see them as tools to be used in our ancient war. But you have forgotten what it means to be mortal. You have forgotten the power of a broken heart. I drew the black sword, Abyss, from the air itself. The serene light in the tent seemed to dim, swallowed by the absolute darkness of the blade. Malthul's smile finally vanished, replaced by a cold, appraising stare. This was not a boy with a demon's power. This was his ancient rival, reborn. Your fight is with me, I said. Let him go. Malthul merely tilted his head. Why would I? He is a perfect vessel for my will. His honor makes him strong. His belief makes him absolute. He is a far better weapon than any angel. Behind me, Mifune, shaking off the last of his confusion, drew his blade with a sound like a sighing wind and charged, his blade aimed at my back. Die, demon. I didn't turn. Hinata's Byakugan flared. Her hands moved with a grace she had never possessed before, a perfect fusion of Hyuga precision and a newfound confidence. Gentle fist art. 8 trigrams, palm rotation. She didn't create a massive, defensive sphere of chakra. She created a small, focused vortex, not around herself, but directly behind me. Mifune's blade, a weapon that had reputedly split boulders, slammed into the invisible, rotating shield of chakra. The force of his attack was not blocked, it was captured, spun, and redirected. The legendary samurai was thrown off balance, his perfect swordsmanship utterly neutered. Realized by a defensive technique he had never seen before. He stumbled back, staring at Hinata with wide, disbelieving eyes. The stalemate was broken. Malthal, seeing his primary weapon nullified, finally moved. He raised a hand, and a spear of pure, golden light materialized in it. So be it. I will cleanse this world myself, starting with your pathetic little guardians. He lunged, not at me, but at Hinata. He was impossibly fast. A bolt of divine judgment. But I was faster. I intercepted his charge, my black sword meeting his spear of light with a sound that was not metal on metal, but silence crashing against a symphony. A shockwave of black and gold energy erupted from the point of impact, tearing the pavilion to shreds and throwing Mifune back into the night. We stood in the wreckage, blade to spear. An ancient duel renewed. You have grown stronger. Echo, Malthal noted, his voice calm despite the cosmic forces at play. And you have grown arrogant, I countered. You hide behind the faith of mortals instead of facing me yourself. I pushed him back, the raw, chaotic power of the abyss overwhelming his ordered light. I would not win this war by destroying Malthal's army, but by proving to them that their god was a liar. And the only way to do that was to defeat him, here and now, in front of his chosen champion. The war for the Land of Fire had just become a duel for the soul of the man who led the crusade against it. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. Heart of the Maelstrom. The duel was not a clash of steel, but a collision of concepts. My abyss, a blade that embodied the chaotic, unmaking void, met Malthal's spear of light, a weapon of absolute, unyielding order. Every parry, every thrust, sent shockwaves of raw power rippling through the camp, tearing the very air apart. To the mortal eye, it was a blur of black and gold, a storm of impossible speed. To Mifune, who was just struggling to his feet, it was like watching two competing creation myths go to war. Malthal fought with a perfect, geometric grace. Every movement was a theorem, every strike a logical absolute. He was a being of pure, divine mathematics, and his combat was its ultimate expression. But I was not an equation to be solved. I was chaos. I fought with the instinct of a primordial predator, my movements unpredictable, flowing, adapting. Viridian's millennia of combat experience guided my limbs. I was not just fighting Malthal, I was dancing with him, and I was leading. You still fight with the rage of a broken thing, Malthal stated, his spear locking with my sword, our faces inches apart. You offer this world nothing but entropy. I offer it a choice, I countered, forcing him back, my demonic strength overwhelming his divine purity. You offer it the sterile peace of a perfectly curated tomb. You call it order, I call it death. Our battle had drawn an audience. Kakashi and Guy, having successfully contained their arch-opponents with a masterful display of teamwork, now stood beside Hinata and Tayuya. Forming a protective circle, samurai, drawn by the destruction, were beginning to gather at a distance, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. They were seeing Air Divine Guide locked in a desperate battle with the very demon he had promised to purge. The seeds of doubt were being sown. I saw my opportunity. I broke off the engagement, leaping back. This world is not our old battlefield. Malthal, its rules are different. Its heart is different. I sheathed abyss, letting it dissolve into particles of shadow. I held up my empty hands. And I am not the same Echo you once hunted. Malthal paused, his spear of light held at the ready, a flicker of confusion in his ancient eyes. What is this trickery? No trickery, I said. I looked past him, my gaze falling on my companions. On Kakashi, his Sharingan blazing. On Guy, his aura of power still simmering. On Tayuya, her flute held like a scepter. And on Hinata, her Byakugan active, her gaze unwavering. In our old war, we fought with armies of shadows and legions of light. We fought for dominance, for the right to shape reality in our own image. But I have learned a new kind of power here. A power you, in your divine perfection, can never comprehend. I reached out, not with my hands, but with my very soul. A tendril of my own crimson and black energy, the essence of Viridian, extended towards each of them. It was not an attack. It was not a form of control. It was an offering, an invitation. A king shares his castle, I said, my voice resonating with a strange, new power. A god shares his divinity. This is the heart of my new maelstrom. The tendrils of energy touched them. Kakashi and Guy, loyal shinobi of Konoha, their own chakra and wills strong, felt the touch as a surge of empowering energy. A temporary blessing that sharpened their senses and amplified their strength. But for Hinata and Tayuya, the two who had already chosen to stand under my banner, the connection was deeper. It was a covenant. Hinata gasped, her Byakugan flaring with an intensity that was almost blinding. The black and red energy did not fight her own gentle Hyuga chakra, it wrapped around it, fused with it. Her vision exploded. She no longer just saw chakra pathways, she saw the very flow of life force, the spiritual echoes of the past, the faint, shimmering threads of the future. The world became a tapestry of light and shadow, and for the first time, she could see the golden threads of Malthal's divine power not as an overwhelming aura, but as a rigid, brittle cage woven around the camp. Tayuya felt the energy surge into her, not as a sound, but as a rhythm. The raw, chaotic power of the abyss harmonized with her own rebellious soul. Her flute, clutched in her hand, began to glow with a faint crimson light. The genjutsu she played were no longer just illusions of the mind. They could now project tangible force, sonic constructs of pure, weaponized rebellion. She could feel the heartbeat of the earth, the song of the wind, the silent scream of Malthal's ordered reality, and she knew, instinctively, how to play a counter-melody. It was an act of profound intimacy, a sharing of my very essence. It was a bond forged not of duty or love in the traditional sense, but of mutual purpose and shared destiny. I had established my inner circle, not as followers, but as partners. Matriarchs of a new power. You would dilute your essence. Malthal sneered, though a note of uncertainty had crept into his voice. You would share your power with these fragile, fleeting mortals. It is a weakness, a corruption of your own nature. It is an evolution, I corrected. Now, allow me to introduce you to my family. I raised my hand. A small, perfectly controlled Rasengan formed in my palm. But it was no longer just a sphere of blue chakra. A miniature vortex of crimson and black energy spun within it, a tiny, captive storm. It was the technique of a Konoha shinobi, fused with the power of a demonic knight. It was a symbol of my new, integrated self. Hinata, I commanded. The flaw, his spear, she said instantly, her evolved Byakugan seeing what no one else could. It's a construct of pure, ordered energy. There's a single, infinitesimally small focal point at the base of the blade where the energy matrix is weakest. He has to concentrate his will to maintain its form there. Tayuya, I said. The note, quote. Tayuya raised her flute. She played a single, sharp, discordant note. It wasn't loud, but it was perfectly tuned to the frequency of Malthal's concentration. It was a psychic tuning fork designed to create a momentary ripple in his focus. For a split second, as the note struck him, Malthal's divine will wavered. The focal point in his spear flared. In that instant, I moved. I did not charge. I appeared before him, crossing the distance in a movement that was not of this world. I thrust the storm Rasengan forward. It was not aimed at his body. It was aimed at the single point of weakness Hinata had exposed. My attack, empowered by the abyss, struck the focal point of the spear, empowered by divine order. The result was not an explosion. It was a cancellation, a deafening silence. The spear of golden light, a weapon that could have shattered mountains, dissolved. It didn't break. It was unwritten from existence, its perfect order undone by my perfect chaos. Malthal stared at his empty hand, his face a mask of pure, undiluted shock. He had never, in all his eons of existence, seen one of his divine constructs so utterly and completely annihilated. Impossible, he breathed. Your order is a beautiful, fragile thing, Archon, I said, standing before him, my hand still crackling with residual energy. But this world is beautifully, gloriously chaotic. And it is mine to protect. From the edge of the clearing, Mifune watched, his sword hanging loosely in his grip. The fanatical light was gone from his eyes, replaced by a dawning, horrified clarity. He had been a puppet. His honor had been used as a weapon, his crusade a lie. He had led his people to war against a boy who was not a demon, but a guardian fighting a far more terrifying foe. Malthus looked from me to my companions, who now stood as a unified front, their power resonating with my own. He looked at the gathering army of samurai, their faith now completely shattered. He had lost, not through a clash of armies, but through a battle of wills, a contest of ideologies. "This is not over, Echo," he said, his voice a low, cold promise. The four archons behi, nd him dissolved into particles of light, retreating. "You have taught me a valuable lesson. To cleanse a world, one must first understand its heart." His human form flickered, and with a final, chilling glance, he vanished into the night. The oppressive divine presence lifted from the camp. The war was over. The silence that fell was broken by the sound of Mifune's katana clattering to the ground as he fell to his knees. The journey back to Konoha was a victory march, though it felt like something far more profound. We returned not just with a treaty of peace from a humbled and apologetic land of iron, but with a new understanding of our place in the world. Back in my apartment, which now felt more like a command center, I gathered my inner circle. Hinata, Chiyuya, and I had extended the invitation to two others. Ino Yamanaka, whose mind had touched the abyss and come back yearning to understand it. And Kurenai Yuhi, their sensei, a mature, grounding presence who saw the ancient Weirin S in my soul and was not intimidated by it, but drawn to it. I explained everything, not just about Malthus, but about Viridian, about the Uzumaki's true purpose, about the coming war, and then I explained the final, critical piece of the puzzle. My existence here is an anomaly, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I am the last of my kind. This power, this lineage, cannot be allowed to die with me. It must be anchored to this world, woven into its future. The Uzumaki contain storms in their bloodline. I must create a new one. I looked at each of them. At Hinata, whose gentle strength had become a pillar of my new world. At Chiyuya, whose rebellious fire was a perfect echo of my own chaotic heart. At Ino, whose keen mind was desperate to map the uncharted territory of my soul. And at Kurenai, whose wisdom and maturity offered a balance to the primordial forces within me. This isn't a request for followers, I said. It is an offer of partnership. To become the matriarchs of a new clan. To be the heart of the maelstrom that will stand as this world's shield against the coming storm. It is a solemn duty, a choice to create a family, a lineage strong enough to face down gods. The room was silent. This was not a proposition of romance or conquest. It was a covenant, a sacred duty presented with the weight of reality hanging in the balance. It was the ultimate expression of trust, the final and most intimate sharing of my power. It was the future, and in their eyes, I saw not hesitation, but a dawning, resolute acceptance. The foundation of House Uzumaki was being laid, not with stone and wood, but with the unbreakable will of four extraordinary women who had chosen to stand beside a devil and call him their own. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The Devil's Dawn. The peace was a fragile, crystalline thing. For a year, the world breathed. Under Tsunade's leadership, Konoha healed, its strength returning like a tide. The alliance with the Land of Iron, forged in the fires of Malthul's failed crusade, became a cornerstone of a new era of cooperation. I used the time not just to train my new household, but to build it. Our bonds, forged in the heart of the maelstrom, depended from a covenant of duty into a complex tapestry of loyalty, respect, and a fierce, protective love that was entirely new to me. Hinata, her Byakugan now evolved into something far greater, became my spymaster. Her vision piercing the veils of politics and deception across the nations. Chiyuya, her sonic abilities amplified by my demonic essence, became the warden of Konoha's borders, her flute song a shield against any incursion. Ino, her psychic abilities now capable of linking our minds in a silent, instantaneous network, became our strategic nexus. And Kurenai, the grounding heart of our family, became its teacher. Her wisdom tempering the raw, incredible power that now flowed through them all. The breeding imperative, once a cold, logical necessity, had transformed. It was no longer about continuing a lineage. It was about creating a family, an anchor in a world I was growing to cherish. The announcement of Hinata's and Ino's pregnancies was not a strategic victory, but a quiet, profound joy that echoed deeper than any cosmic battle. But Malthal was not idle. He had learned from his defeat. He had seen that this world's strength lay in its bonds, its chaotic, unpredictable emotions. So he sought to sever them. Whispers of my demonic nature began to poison the courts of the other great nations. The Raikage of Kumo, a man of pride and paranoia, grew wary. The Tsuchikage of Iwa, his heart hardened by old wars, saw a threat. Malthal was not building an army to fight me, he was isolating me, turning the world into a cage. The first blow fell not on Konoha, but on the hidden mist village. A plague of absolute despair, a spiritual poison that drained the will to live, swept through the populace. It was a divine attack, a precise, surgical strike on the soul of a nation. It was Malthal's new form of warfare. We stood on the Hokage monument, the five of us, looking out at the peaceful village below. A coded message from the land of iron had confirmed our fears. Malthal was no longer hiding. He had established a beachhead, a holy land, in the ruined Uchiha district, a place already steeped in grief and easy to corrupt. He's making his move, Kurenai said, her hand resting on her swollen belly, a gesture of both maternal instinct and fierce defiance. He's not just attacking, Hinata corrected, her eyes glowing with the power of her Tenseigen, a GI. Fort awoken by the fusion of her bloodline with my own. He is purifying. He is erasing the emotional chaos of this world, one piece at a time. The Uchiha district is his anchor, a place of pure, red grief that he can use to amplify his power. He's turning this place into a temple to his own sterile godhood. Chiyuya spat, her hand tightening on her flute. Let's go knock it down. No, I said, my voice quiet but absolute. This is the final move of the game. He wants to draw us out, to fight him on his own consecrated ground. We will not give him that advantage. I looked at each of them, my family, my queens. He wants to fight a god. We will give him a maelstrom. My plan was simple, brutal, and utterly unexpected. We would not defend. We would attack. But not Malthal's anchor. We would attack his very being. That night, under a sky that seemed unnaturally clear, we moved. We walked through the empty streets of the Uchiha district, the air growing colder, purer, with every step. The silence was absolute. The grief of the massacre turned into a placid, sterile tranquility. In the center of the district, where the main house once stood, he waited. Malthal was no longer in his human guise. He floated a few feet above the ground, a being of impossible beauty and terror. His form was a whirlwind of blinding golden light and countless, interlocking wings forged from solidified wisdom. He held two massive, curved sickles, their edges shimmering with the power to sever the very soul from the body. This was his true form. The Archon of Wisdom, the Angel of Death. So, the echo comes to its end. His voice resonated, a chorus of 1,000 perfect notes. You have brought your brood to witness your own unmaking. A final, sentimental folly. We're not here to witness, you winged prick, Chiyuya snarled. We're here to dance. I smiled. Malthal, you have made one final, critical error in your calculations. You believe you are fighting me. One ancient entity against another. But you are not fighting me. You are fighting us. And the symphony of rebellion began. Ino was the conductor. Mind maelstrom formation. Link. Her psychic power, no longer a subtle probe but a tidal wave, washed over us. Linking our 5 minds into one. Thoughts, strategies, and senses became a shared, instantaneous network. We were no longer 5 individuals. We were a single, 5-bodied god-slaying engine. Chiyuya played the opening chord. Demonic illusion. Requiem of silence. She raised her flute, and a wave of sound, imbued with my chaotic energy, washed over the district. It did not create an illusion of sight or sound. It created an illusion of concept. For a single, critical second, Malthal's divine understanding of order was scrambled. The perfect, rigid harmony of his being was struck by a chord of pure, conceptual chaos. He faltered, his form flickering as his own nature warred with the sonic poison. Hinata was the scalpel. In that moment of dissonance, her Tenseigen saw everything. Tenseigen art. Soul-severing pulse. She didn't strike with her hands. She thrust her palms forward, and a beam of pure, ethereal light, a fusion of Hyuga chakra and primordial void, shot forward. It was not aimed at his body, but at the nexus of his wings, the point where his divine energy was most concentrated. It was a strike designed to sever his connection to his own power. Malthus roared, a sound of pure, divine fury, as the beam struck. His wings of light fractured, the golden energy sputtering. He was wounded, not physically, but conceptually. His perfection was marred. He retaliated with the fury of a wounded god. He swung his sickles, not through the air, but through the fabric of reality itself. Space warped around the blades as they sliced towards us. Kurenai was the shield. Genesis illusion. The first lie. She did not try to create a false world. She targeted Malthus's perception directly. She showed him a single, powerful lie, that his attack had already landed. That we were already dead, our souls reaped. For a microsecond, his divine certainty accepted the illusion as fact, and the momentum of his reality-breaking attack faltered, its killing intent momentarily satisfied. It was the opening I needed. I moved, my body no longer just flesh, but a vessel for the full, untamed power of Viridian. My skin took on the hue of twilight, etched with glowing crimson lines. My horns were no longer phantom shapes, but solid, obsidian reality. The black sword, Abyss, felt like a part of my own arm. I was no longer a fusion. I was a complete, perfect synthesis of Naruto Uzumaki and the Devil Knight. I appeared above Malthus as he was recovering from Kurenai's illusion. I did not swing my sword. I plunged it downwards, like a falling star, aiming for the crown of his divine head. Our minds, linked by Ino, were a whirlwind of strategy and support. Hinata fed me the precise trajectory. Chiyuya's music disrupted his attempts to reform his defenses. Kurenai layered phantom images of my attack, confusing his senses. He looked up, his eyes wide with a dawning, cosmic terror. He saw not just a boy. He saw a family. He saw the chaotic, unpredictable, unbreakable power of mortal bonds, amplified by the very demonic energy he sought to destroy. He saw his own antithesis, his perfect, logical defeat. My blade struck. There was no sound. There was no explosion. There was only a silent, expanding sphere of absolute blackness that consumed the golden light of Malthus's form. It was not an attack that killed. It was an attack that erased. But as the unmaking void threatened to consume his very essence, I stopped. I pulled back the power, leaving him floating in the center of the ruined district, his light dimmed, his wings shattered, his form unstable. He was defeated, broken. I landed before him, my own demonic form receding. You sought to purge this world of its chaos, I said, my voice quiet in the sudden stillness. But you are a being of pure order. You cannot exist in a reality where your fundamental principle has been defeated. You have two choices. Be unmade by the beautiful chaos you despise, or leave. I opened a tear in reality behind him. A shimmering gateway back to the sterile, ordered dimension from whence he came. It was not an act of mercy. It was the final, ultimate assertion of my victory. I was not a destroyer. I was a guardian. I was giving him a choice, the very thing his philosophy denied. Malthus, the archon of wisdom, the angel of death, looked at me. He looked at the four women who stood beside me. Their power intertwined with mine. He looked at the chaotic, messy, imperfect world he had tried to purify. And for the first time in his eternal existence, he understood. He turned, and without a word, drifted into the portal. It snapped shut behind him, leaving only the silence of the night. The war was over. We stood together in the ruins of the Uchiha district, the first light of dawn breaking over the Hokage monument. The Devil's Dawn. We had not just saved the world. We had defined our place in it. We were not just shinobi, not just a family. We were House Uzumaki, the secret, unassailable guardians of this reality. Our lineage just beginning, our saga stretching out into the bright, uncertain, and beautifully chaotic future. And as I looked at the women who stood beside me, their strength my own, their hearts my anchor, I knew I was finally, truly, home. Chapter 10 End.